accepting the results. That's what is going on. So yes, so all those results for the good people of City Center are being collated here. So it is ongoing.
Now, it is ongoing, but when we are done from here, where do we go from here? That is, when we finish the integrity test, like you have said, and we verify and say, well, this is good to go, where do we go from here?
Yes, you know that collating here the word results does not mean that there's a winner. No.
Okay.
It's collation.
Because this is just a part of it.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, the collation officer is diligently looking through the results to see if they have passed integrity checks. For instance, is there an overvoting? That's why he's cross-checking with the card reader. So when all of that is done, he proceeds to the next level. So in other words, there is no winner yet. It is the ongoing process. You have the winner when there is a declaration. So you notice that from the polling units to all the collation centers, even here, the party agents are here, security people are here, our colleagues, the journalists are all here. When all of this is done, party agents get the results. They see the results, and then that is part of the transparency tool of the commission, guaranteeing the right to know. So the announcement of results does not produce a winner unless when we are done and the returning officer declares the result, which can only be obtained by the tribunals. So this is what is
happening. By the way, can you give us a sense of the number of votes that we are expecting here, for this city center ward? Give us an idea of the number.
No. We're not going to cross that bridge yet. We'll have to get to it. That's the essence of collation. Yes. And like I said, Commission's transparency tool, the right to know, would also be implemented here. What he's done, the party agents are all around. They will sign the result, get copies. So until we're done with collation, it won't be proper to preempt. I did say that the collation involves integrity checks. So he's checking out the manual results vis-a-vis the card reader, number of accredited voters. You know that the commission, like I said earlier, has its policies. So he knows all the rules. He's applying them. Look at him diligently applying it. So you may then think that this is a bit slow, but it has to be so that to get it right, so that the result will not be faltered.
All right then. Thank you very much indeed, Okafor, for your time. I know you are quite busy, and I should let you go so that you can get on with your work. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And so that's the situation we have here at the AMAC Collation Center for yesterday's elections. But we're still standing around, we're still nosing around, and we'll be willing to give you developments, details of developments as they may unfold in this place.
Victor, in fact, that collation center does really look like a newsroom, especially when production is ongoing. But, Prof, did you hear the INEC official there? She was talking about cross-checking results with the card readers before they can accept the results. That's for the integrity of the process. What would you say about that?
I think that is another commendable step that has been taken and built in as part of trying to make sure that the results that we eventually get, true reflection of what happened at the polls. And I'm also sure that that will, to a large extent, help work against the arbitrariness by which maybe results were being taken together, written, and then just overvoting and many things as against what used to be in place. That is, again, another commendation for INEC learning from what has been going wrong before now. That you cannot just come, give results, and without any person being able to cross-check. And so that, again, I believe should build confidence of the people that INEC is working hard to make sure that as much as possible that our results and our elections are free and fair.
Yeah.
And so if that is being done across board, and I'm sure yesterday, Festus Okoye was emphasizing that from the Situation Room in Abuja, where he was mentioning that you cannot just bring results, we must cross-check.
Yeah.
I think that is the ideal thing to do, and it's quite commendable. And I was quite pleased seeing Victor Azu, a product of my Department of Philosophy here in the University of Benin, where I'm the dean. It was nice listening to him from that angle as it were. Yeah.
Kudos to you, Victor. Results are arriving at the Senatorial Collation Center in Abuja for Edo Central Senatorial District. Collation officers from Esan West, Esan Southeast, Esan Northeast, Igweben, and Esan Central local government areas are being awaited as officials of INEC and party agents are already at the Girls Model Secondary School in Abuja, the venue for announcement of the final results. The district has 2 federal constituencies and 1 senatorial district. Prof, okay, away from our collation, I was just wondering, does everything have to be on hold because we want to have election? I think in civilized climes, when you probably vote and you continue with whatever you're doing, but here it's like a whole day gone. You know, for example, now Benin is still trying to, pick up. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, just before I latch on to that question you asked, I want to say that one thing we must tell our viewers now, and I think most Nigerians are already battling with the seeming confusion that is happening with the social media, is that we have been told by INEC that no matter the results, you are getting online and everywhere until you get the official returning officer authorized. That is the point that was being made from Abuja as well. Whatever you are saying is more of rumor, so to speak. Because at the end of the day, what we are beginning to find is that, yes, you might win in a particular unit, but that is not the end of the results. So people that are prematurely celebrating have to keep cool, because this is almost the proverbial issue of the tortoise that was in a hole or kind of prison for 7 years, and it was like, oh, we are going to remove you from there, and he started getting agitated, get me out of here. That is the last day they were to pull it out. We have been waiting for these elections for quite some time. It has been a long exercise, and the results are almost ready. So rather than start celebrating or bemoaning either victories or losses based on premature results that have been released, one will call for greater patience until those that are authorized to do the declaration get to do that. Now, reverting to the point you raised concerning
people are
the way...
sorry, before we get to that, they're so eager, they want to know what's happening, who's winning, who's that.
But they must learn to be patient. It's just like you are waiting in the labor room for delivery of a baby.
After 9 months.
You must just be patient and pray that the delivery comes well. And that is how we should pray, that at the end of the day, all this exercise we have engaged in are not exercise in futility, and that everything comes out well. Now, back to your question of why is it that elections are like this in Nigeria. It's unfortunate that we cannot always lift the ideals from other climes to say we are replicating such things in our own environment. And that is that we seem to have been building up along this line already. And anything short of it, all right, might make it more difficult to conduct the kind of elections we have. If anything, from what we are seeing now, as a friend was discussing last night, until maybe we are advanced enough to start going electronic, where you are not going to line up and do all those sort of things, you find that even when there is this kind of go slow in the country, no movements and all, people are still prone to and are still exploiting the situation to cause mayhem and havoc in other areas, which is that elections in our country, political positions in our country are not such things that you do without feeling of, oh, let anything just go. There is the high level of desperation that is associated with the conduct of elections in our country. And as I pointed out in another program yesterday, it is unfortunate that our historical antecedents tend to even confirm that this has always been the trend. Because the West, for example, not in the First Republic and all, common cliche was, oh, Operation Wettier. What was that all about? It was that people that were seen not to be lied to, were seen as opponents in elections. Some of them were even being set ablaze live. That is, you put fuel on people, you set them ablaze. There has been so much tension, for example, that right now, the level of violence, I'm sure other people watching Nigeria will almost be crying for our country. I'm sure that compatriots that are in different parts of the world are embarrassed by these things that are happening. It is not African. It's not in our nature. It's just that a few individuals are really giving us this bad day. And it is important that proactive action should be taken. Like somebody was mentioning, and I subscribe to it fully, there should be penalties. Yeah. And not just penalties. People should be seen to be made to face the full wrath of the law for these things that have happened. Because lives will just be wasted like this. People will burn INEC office, destroy materials. At the end of the day, almost nobody will be held accountable. And whenever there is no punishment for crime, it's an inducement for that to happen again. And that is why, as we contend with these elections, we thank God today is Sunday morning. People were thinking that by this time, people that traveled, many meetings that were seated for today have been postponed because people were scared about what today will be like. Let us hope that we can get more civil in the way we conduct our elections in Nigeria.
All right, Professor Ragbe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and my pleasure being with you again.
All right, Professor Ragbe is the Dean, Faculty of Arts and Orator, University of Benin. At this point, we'll have to get back to Abuja. Like we'll say here, Fisayo, or whoever is there, Domosa.
Wakoyo, Agatha. Let me say first before we go back to the discourse, that's why NTA is so great in terms of its reach. We can even reunite a lecturer with his former student right here on Nigeria Decides. Professor, I can see that your training of our own correspondent Victor Azu is rubbing off on his job. Thank you very much. Now back to the house, we have Bola Bakari and of course Dr. Mukhtar Imam. You know, we say, you know, it's not a do-or-die affair. What should we be saying to the younger generation coming up? This legacy of Togri and winner takes it all seem to have permeated to the very migraines of society. How do we discourage it in a very strong way?
Thank you very much, Fisayo. You see, you said we say. There's a distinction between what is and what ought to be. Right? What is on ground at the moment is an unfortunate reality that electorates and even those who have been elected tend to look at public offices as a do-or-die affair. That's what we consistently say shouldn't be a do-or-die affair. But then the reality on ground clearly contradicts what is being practiced. It's a sad reality, again, like I mentioned, and there's the need to resound the words to the hearing of younger generation that we need to move past that thought. But reality is this, that there are a lot of factors and variables that must be put in place, first and foremost, to be able to practically see us moving away from that. It's about doing, not about just saying. We will consistently say these things, but people will act in whatever manner that they deem fit as a result of the things that they see. It's an action-reaction thing. People react to the things that they see. When they see a certain action, that's the same way they will respond or react to it. So first and foremost, for me, I feel the things that need to be done, and this is not just the Nigerian factor. After African politics for a while, it's an African problem. And that's the reason why the ilks of Ali Mazuroi and the late Bala Usman of blessed memory and the others will tell you about the crisis within the African political structure. Yes, there are a whole lot of rationales have been advanced as reasons why we're where we are today, but not to go too deep into history, you will come to realize that, and part of the things that we've talked about is democracy being something alien to us. And so the likes of Ali have talked about the contradiction between traditional system of
which is basically monarchical
or modern liberal democracy, and he says we found ourselves in the middle, what he referred to as communocracy. Of course, today we found ourselves in a democratic climate. We must embrace that reality in front of us. But what are the things that need to be done within that democratic structure is exactly what would aid us to either move away from this quagmire we're in, speaking to the issue you have raised, seeing politics as a do or die affair, or being stagnated and dragged into it. And what are the things, first and foremost, for me, that needs to be put into consideration? The cost of governance in Africa is too high. We must look at that. If a classroom teacher, a professor, retires from his service, has dedicated all his time and life, and all he earns is not up to 1/10 of what a man will earn as a counselor, for crying out loud, what do you expect? So for me, I think the first step that needs to be put in place is that we try to reduce we have monetized, we have so much given so much of that monetary thing to governance. And so, yes, of course, people will make it a do or die affair, because that's the only venture, about the only venture people find as a way of enriching themselves, becoming overnight billionaires and what have you. So people will do whatever it takes to find themselves in that fold. That's one. Secondly, we need to also find a way of reorientating ourselves. I think part of Nigeria's problem, which for me is a chunk of the problem, is not just about political reforms or micro and macroeconomic policies. I think the chunk of it, the bulk of it, lies with our social psychological conditioning. We need to begin to reorientate ourselves as a people. And this culture, for some people, they believe in the model of the, well, there are different models to it, the top-bottom approach, the bottom-top approach, slash it in the middle approach, wherever you're going to. But what we need to do is that we need to catch the younger generations firmly. And this lies with not just...
And perhaps lead by example as well.
Exactly, yes. It's about civil societies, it's about teachers in institutions of learning, it's about those who find themselves in position of authority.
All right. You know, Mr. Bakari, let's look at it from this. I think we had some early warning signs before the elections came on stream, before we actually started the process of elections itself. Because on in the days leading to the elections, at Sisi Alangwa in Abia State, already PVC Center, once PVC Center was already burned down, the same repeated itself in Plateau State. That was an early warning sign that it wasn't going to be quite a free lunch this time around. So what you saw play out in some parts of the country yesterday, did it come as a shock to you?
Thank you, my brother, Desire. Honestly, we need to look at the situation on our hands holistically. And if we're going to do a comparative analysis or talk in terms of percentages, the situation we're seeing is not totally far-fetched or unexpected. I normally say one thing about the truth being tops every time. We should be able to tell ourselves that the devil is alive and he's working on people he can work on a regular basis. There is no perfect situation here. As much as INEC is trying to do its job, putting together policies, this rejigging and rejigging, at the same time, there are people out there that are ready, willing, and able to throw spanners in the works. So like you asked, basically, we should be set for those spanners in the works. But those shouldn't be a deterrent to the good move we have on our hands. Unfortunately, with human nature, give them 99% good news. They will forget in 99 seconds. Give them 1% of bad news. They will descend on that, they will dwell on that. But as we speak, I can tell you categorically here that to toe a little line of what you threw at my brother out there, we need a kind of orientation that is on a national level. Which brings to the fore the factor of what policies, what legacies are we leaving for our kids and our young ones. I'll tell you this. I ran an inference some time ago. I was saying, look at this young man, Lewis Hamilton. His father took him to a go-kart rink at the age of 6. Now he stops. Look at the Williams sisters. Their father taught them how to play tennis.
Yes.
At the age of 5. Look at where they are today. There are numerous instances. Tiger Woods, his father taught him how to play golf at age 6. What are we teaching at age 3? Thank you. Now what are we teaching our kids? Nothing. The only thing we're teaching them right now is there is only one place where there is money, and that is in governance. And like he said, there are too many pecs in governance. Too many pecs.
So it's very attractive. Okay, let's also tell you, of course, earlier we were at in the Ibadan Network Center, and a report still reaching us from there says that INEC State Collation Center in Osogbo has commenced announcement of results in the presidential election. Out of 30 local government areas, 15 are ready for announcement, hoping that as the announcement of results continue to come in, other results will also continue to come in from that state. The State Collation Center is, of course, being supervised by UNILAG Vice Chancellor Professor Tony Ogundipe. So we'll be hearing from that point. Of course, earlier we went to Benin. Now we're back in Abuja. My colleague is here. I don't know whether any of his lecturers are here. Mayor Ogidi, it's over to you at the International Conference Center. What do you have for us?
Fisayo, we are room where staff of INEC and other officials in that department are interfacing with officials on the field to get information, and if they have any challenge, they can, be of assistance to them. But before we left the collation center late yesterday, we were told that a crucial meeting was going on by the election management body. And we presume some of the issues that were discussed in that meeting were probably reports they received from the resident electoral commissioners relating to issues of violence that were observed in some parts of the country, and also smart card readers, as well as the situation of voting across the River State. Some parts of the states recorded violence. He was specific on River State, Bonny, and Akoko-Toro local government areas where some wards were marred by violence. And after a consultative meeting with stakeholders, elections will be rescheduled there. Let me tell you that the River State has a history of electoral violence. Sometime last year, Port Harcourt City constituency 3 elections were marred by violence, and up till this moment, that election has not been conducted. That election is supposed to take place alongside with by-elections in Katsina State and that of Bauchi, as well as Kwara, and one state constituency election in Cross River State. All these elections were held in November last year, but that of River State is yet because of the violence they recorded during the election. Obviously, the elections were cut midway because INEC, the resident electoral commissioner, came publicly and announced that the violence that being marred the situation, they can't continue anymore. Until this moment, that election is still stalled. That is just one out of the million examples of the history of electoral violence in River State. When the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, met with the National Peace Committee being headed by former head of state, Absalami Abubakar, he told them that River State is a flashpoint. That was sometime December last year. And that assumption or prediction has come to pass. River State has 23 local government areas, but we don't know whether the violence was also recorded beyond the 2 local governments that were mentioned by Festus Okoye yesterday. And the INEC chairman, in his last daily press briefings, that was precisely on Friday, told Nigerians to avoid spreading fake news, that is, displaying election results before the official announcement by the commission. He told us that only INEC has the mandate to announce results. But just as the polls were on, the social media platforms were flooded with results from polling units and local governments, and that can be an invitation for violence. If, for instance, a candidate sees the results of 500 in a particular polling unit, and when INEC probably officially announced the result is 200-300, he may feel there was some, malpractice somewhere. So these are some of the reasons why the INEC chairman warned seriously that election violence, posting of results online before the official announcement of the results by the commission is an aberration. And I think it's high time the commission should use one or two of such persons as scapegoats so that others can, be cautioned of that kind of practice. So for now, we will update you. The center, as announced by the INEC chairman, will officially open by 6 p.m. today. But journalists, in our usual characteristic manner, we are very anxious to hear from the commission on what is going on. Not only journalists in this case, Nigerians. Some of them are now breathing through their nose, and mouth, to just know what is happening. Let me tell you, Fisayo, I was called by a friend around 2 a.m. and today that I can't sleep. I need to see the result. But that is how anxious Nigerians are. And the mood of the nation, depicts the fact that the elections were keenly contested. Both parties cannot even predict who will win. And that is democracy in practice. And I think at the end of the day, Nigeria will come out victorious. This election is not about candidates, it's about the nation, the reputation of Nigeria. That is what is at stake. Whatever comes out of this result will speak a lot about the nation at the international level. So all Nigerians should do what is expected of them. Avoid announcing results before INEC. That will going to be an invitation for violence, as I said earlier. So anytime, any update from the INEC, probably from Festus Okoye, we will going to link up with you, Fisayo, to tell you what is happening. But officially, 6 p.m., the collation at this center, we hope will commence, as announced by the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, on Friday.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ogidi. You are a fountain of information. I always said it, Mayor Ogidi is not a mere reporter. And that's why we go straight from here to Kaduna. Amina Dongoyaro is ready for us. Amina, Yaya, Aiki, are you ready for me?
Network Center. With me today are Awal Muhammad Mashi, the Administrative Secretary of Independent National Electoral Commission. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
And we also have Zubair Abubakar, Coordinator Rights and Democracy Volunteers, Kaduna State.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
We'll be discussing, gentlemen, the general overview of the elections that held yesterday and what is happening at collation centers today. I will start with you, sir. That is Malam Awal. We are at the stage of collation. The electorate know the procedures to follow to vote. Now, what are the procedures for collation and declaration of results for the offices being contested, or rather votes for the offices being contested?
Okay, like you rightly said, it is an open thing, but all the same, I think I should make certain things clear to members of the public. Yeah. The elections are conducted, as you rightly said, at the PO level. When the elections are concluded, all the results are expected to be conveyed by the ad hoc staff in company, of course, of the security agents that worked with them at the PO level and the party agents to the next level of collation. That is the RA level, the ward level.
The ward level.
When they arrive, they submit the results. And of course, all other documents and things that were used for at the PU level.
At the polling
and principally, I'm talking about the smart card reader, the ballot boxes, and of course the registers that were used. These are the basic things that they are expected to convey to the collation officer at the collation level. Now, upon receipt of those material, what the collation officer is expected to do is look, first of all, at the EC8A or 8A1 or 8A2, depending on the election. EC8A is for presidential, 8A1 is for Senate, and 8A2 is for National Assembly elections, House of Reps. Yeah. What is expected of him is to look first at the results. Let us take the presidential, for instance. If the result declared is probably 400 collectively for all contestants, for example, for all the contestants, including spoiled and rejected ballot papers, then that should also be reflected in the smart card reader. That is why it is expected of him to go to open the smart card reader and look at the information.
The total number of votes
Absolutely,
should tally.
because it should tally. Exactly, that's the point I'm trying to make. If it does tally, then we're good. He inputs it into the form, the necessary form, which is from EC8B at his level. Since we are talking about the presidential election, he'll input it into the form, and then all other similar results coming from the same RA will be brought to him, and then they'll similarly be inputted. At the end of the day, he will announce the result, because it is not for him to declare a presidential result. I am making reference to presidential because it's what I've taken right from the word go, to be citing the examples. I'll go back to the other two. So he's expected to do that, and then when he is through, he will go to the next level of collation, that is the local government level, where he'll make the local government collation officer, who will in turn collect, the form. It is expected that whatever is written in from EC8B is now a clean result, because the returning officer, the collation officer at the RA level would have done a very good job if it's worth his salt, and I expect every collation officer to be worth his or her salt, because we made sure that we got the very best of the very best. So what they're expected to do is carry the result upwards to the next collation level, which is the local government collation center. Then the local government collation center collation officer is expected to collate for all the RAs in that particular area, ward, the registration areas. He'll input them into the necessary form and then make the total. Then he's expected to convey them to the next collation center, which is the state collation center. At the state collation center, the state collation officer will be waiting for the local government officer, collation officers to convey the results to him, whence he will, input them into the necessary forms. After all the local, all the state results are inputted from the local governments, then he too is expected to go along with the resident electoral commissioner to the national collation center, to the chief returning officer, who is the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. That is for the presidential.
What about for the Senate and House of Representatives?
Then for the House of Reps and the Senate also, they are, the declaration, or the collation and declaration are dependent upon the number of the local governments. If, for instance, in a situation where you have two local governments for House of Reps, then after the collation at the various stages, what is expected is that we'll have results for two local governments. Then they will be merged, and then a winner will be announced. So it is not the duty now of the collation officer, but the returning officer to return the winner, because that is the level. Then when you go to the Senate, similarly, we do the same procedure. In Kaduna State, for instance, I think Kaduna Central has maybe 7 or 8, I can't recall really. After all the results for the 7, 8 local governments have been collated, then they'll be inputted into the necessary form, and then a declaration of the winner will be made at that particular level.
I'll come back to you. Speaking on this same issue, sir, you are part of the civil society organizations, coordinator, rights and democracy volunteers. That's your office. After the election, what are the duties of the CSOs now at the collation center, or at this collation point now?
The election entirely is a process. Locally, INEC was able to commission some CSOs and to help first enlighten people about the nature of this election. Secondly, after the postponement, to talk to people that there was need for people to become and for people to come out en masse and cast their votes. That was a pre-election activity. This was done by most of the CSOs. In Kaduna State, for example, the rights and democracy volunteers went around all the local governments, canvassing and calling people to come out en masse and vote, and then to vote peacefully. Now, after election, what are the duties of the CSOs? One, when election is going on, if there's anything untoward, not only by the CSOs, but mainly part of the CSO's work is to enlighten the security agents. If there's anything untoward, you call their attention to such things, and then if there are things that can be corrected, they can correct them there immediately. If it will need to, if they will need to arrest the person who is committing such an untoward activity, they will arrest him immediately. If it means just cautioning him, or talking to him, they will do the needful, and then the person will be released. Then,
so now at the collation center,
yes,
do the CSOs have any responsibilities?
Yes, but the responsibilities are very, very limited. All that is needed is to maintain that orderliness and to ensure that they also get to the root of what is happening procedurally. Not that there's any suspect or any doubt as to what INEC is doing, but it's just an issue of transparency. Once the transparency is there, the CSOs are rooted for accountability, so that those who are observers of the election in the process and at the end of the process can be able to attest to the process and say that yes, this election was transparent, it was credible, it must be accepted. And that voice is very, very necessary and credible, because the world today depends so much on the views of observers for democratic development, not only in a country like our own, but even in advanced democracies.
Coming back to you, sir, in the past, between the polling unit and the collation center, the votes counted and announced are not exactly sometimes what is found. What is your take on that now, taking into this election into consideration?
You see, that is one of the magics of our activities right from the period of Professor Jega. You see, we introduced what you call the smart card reader. The magic I'm talking about is that whenever votes are, cast at the PU level, everything goes into the smart card reader. So that if there is any alteration, that is why when you asked me the first question, I alluded to issues such as this. The smart card reader is basically a kind of witness, so to say, because it will be witnessing and recording everything that transpires at the PU level. So that if there is any alteration between what obtained at the PU level and what was supposed to have been declared at the collation center, then it becomes what the Hausa people call rabagardama. In other words, it is the instrument that we use to ensure that the right thing is done. So if there is any alteration, either plus or minus, but what you are leading to now is plus, maybe addition of ballots somewhere along the line, then the ballot box will be used to ascertain the true position of things. So maybe if it happened previously, it cannot be replicated now. It is not possible to do that.
So can the card reader not be tampered with?
No, it cannot be tampered with. There were allegations like this right from the word go. But we made it clear to the public that we have certain chips, certain, security mechanisms that have been inputted into both the smart card reader and the PVCs that nobody can tamper with. Because these are things that are unique and known only to the commission, and therefore they cannot be tampered. There were allegations, that the smart card readers will be pre-programmed or whatever. But I'd like to assure, as we have always been assuring, that that is not possible. It has never been done, and it can never be done.
Coming to you, sir, from past experiences with ballot box tampering, what are the CSOs doing now to checkmate that?
Already, government has taken some steps, which has reduced the level of thuggery in the political process. The postponement has also given INEC an overview of what to do, and I think they have taken the necessary steps. The Nigerian police force has also taken steps to reduce the number of tamperings with ballot boxes. So as for the electorates and the CSOs, there was very little to do. All that the CSOs needed to do was to talk to the general population about the need for them to conduct themselves orderly, in an orderly manner during election. And for parents to ensure that once their wards or children leave the house, they must be able to access where they are going. They should be able to know that their children are not involved with shoddy characters, that they should be able to identify spots where their children is. And at the polling stations, we talk to people about the need not to quarrel either on the basis of the differences of political parties or any mundane or trivial issues, that they should just line up, wait for their turn in the queue, cast their vote, let them follow the INEC regulations that are there for the casting of votes. Once you cast your vote, the law allows you to be there and wait for the announcement of the result. While waiting, you should not quarrel, you should not fight, you should not engage in any political argument. Or if you choose, you can go home and then come back later. These are some of the things we try to tell the general population, but we were more emphatic about the younger generation because they are the ones that have the vibrancy to cause trouble or to misunderstand issues, or because of their exuberance, they can easily be flared up in anger or things like that. So the CSOs essentially will go from one polling booth to another, although it is not entirely the work of the CSO, because as I told you earlier, the Nigerian police, especially here in Kaduna State, the police has taken proactive measures such that when we were going around these polling booths, we saw that people were in an orderly manner. That is why there are no reportage of violence or any act of ballot snatching or any act of quarrels or even fights at the polling stations. And I think this is good. It should be sustained. In future, we must know that nation building has to do with our patriotic instincts and how we deal with our institutions. Unless we are able to behave ourselves in orderly manner and take the democratic course, and probably if there are disputes, take the legal course, we can never have it right.
Hold that thought. Sir, what are the reports you got from the field on INEC performance in terms of material delivery, personnel, and general coordination during the election?
Now, I must confess that we are human beings and we can never be perfect in anything or everything that we do. As human beings, we have our weaknesses. As institutions too, we do have our weaknesses. When the elections started yesterday, we received reports of, certain things that happened in respect of the conduct of election. For instance, the late reporting to the PUs by the ad hoc staff. It did happen because I went around and I saw there were places beyond 8 o'clock that that they should have been opened, but unfortunately were not. They were few and far between. And then again, there were issues with the smart card readers. We received reports of failures of smart card readers in some instances. But the good thing about the issue of smart card readers is that the Commission had taken proactive measures in the sense that we created what we call the RATEX, registration area technicians, and LG techs, local government technicians. These are young, very vibrant men and women that are versed in the use of computers, unlike yours truly, who is dialogue or analog, whatever you call it. So they were very, very good, and what we did was to give them more mobility. Each one of them was responsible, the RATEX, for a certain ward, for a certain area, and they were moving around just in case there were issues with smart card readers. And as God will have it, they were able to fix most of these issues, and then ultimately we are good. So these are a couple of issues that we faced, but which I must confess we overcame. So
INEC was proactive this time around?
Absolutely.
My last question
we have always been proactive, not this time around. We have always been proactive.
My last question to you, sir, before I come over to you is, so should Nigerians trust INEC this time around, taking into consideration the postponement that we just had in the middle of the night?
You see, I would like Nigerians to make up their minds as to our performances. If you reflect backwards, post-2015 general elections, we conducted about 360, 370 elections, either, standalone elections, either by-elections or elections that arose from, nullifications by courts or, due to death of, certain political office holders. And I would like to believe that we've done pretty well, because in a situation where you conducted an election 370 times, only 4 instances we were taken to court. And out of those 4, only 1 is still subsisting in court. I think we should be giving credit, and that should be a reflection of what should be the thought process of people, of Nigerians, in respect to our general performances.
Lastly to you, sir, do you think with this recent election, last election 2019, Nigerians have come of age democratically?
If you look at the history of elections, especially national elections from 1958 through to 1963, 1979, up to 1999,
Yes.
and to date, you will see that apart from the issue of franchise, even the issue of participation, the issue of awareness, the issue of identification of problem issues are improving. Importantly, if you look at in this dispensation, from 1999 to 2015, you are well aware of the nature of allegations respecting electoral issues in Nigeria. At some points, we believe that those who were ruling us never had the mandate to even rule us. As a matter of truth, President Umaru Musa even came out to say that his own mandate was fraud because he believed that it was not a clear win and there were problems associated with his announcement. That shows, one, the level of our development as a nation. It also shows that some of our leaders could come out frankly and denounce issues even pertaining to them. But the 2015 election was a revolution because it changed every attitude in Nigeria. And that was why Nigerians are happy to troop out now, believing that their votes will count, believing that whatever any one of them cast will be relevant, believing that in future nobody will temper or even occupy a position when he doesn't have the mandate of the people.
Thank you very
This
much,
is
sir.
a good development, and I think Nigeria as a country is moving forward. Nigeria cannot be ignored in the Committee of Nations. We are one of the leading nations of the world.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. A very
I
interesting
call that a vote
exchange.
of confidence on INEC. Thank you very
A
much.
very interesting exchange. That's for the people to decide. That's all we have from Kaduna. Over to you, Abuja. Thank you.
Chamina, one of the things that came out from that report or from that discussion is the fact that technology has been integrated, is being used in the operations of INEC. According to the INEC official there, it's almost foolproof, these technologies. That should enhance the process, shouldn't it?
Yeah, of course it should. Quite frankly, there have been, as far as technology is concerned, you will have glitches and hitches back and forth. But integrating technology into every process is not just a welcome development, it is quite essential. It has become a part of our evolutionary process. As a matter of fact, it is so integral today that we cannot do without it. And so therefore, bringing technology into the fold of our electioneering process is something that, yes, we need to do. In the 21st or 22nd century, depending on who's defining the century, there is the need to bring technology into the fold. But having said that, like I mentioned in the beginning, you cannot divorce hitches and glitches from issues of technology. These things are man-made. And so apparently you would have pitfalls and so on and so forth. I had a conversation on another platform in this studio a couple of months before the election, and it was about a report I read, or rather an article I read. Research was conducted on activities of INEC and vis-a-vis the technological applications that they have and so forth. And part of the concerns raised in the article was that PVCs were being cloned. Was that the card reader, obviously, like he apparently mentioned earlier, is a technology that could be tampered with. It could be set and reset and set to default and so on and so forth. And that once the tampering is done, it could actually increase votes for certain individuals and so forth. That's like manipulating the system. But the INEC official who also came to the conversation made it clear that the chip that we have in our PVCs are quite peculiar. But we heard about a lot of reports about the cloning of PVCs from South Africa, from India, and so on and so forth. But then they've talked about these things. They have reposed confidence. And I am very hopeful that with time, yes, there is absolutely no way, again, like I said, that we can have those things, issues of technology, without some of these hitches. But given that we have seen from antecedent, from track record, particularly with the recent, just concluded election yesterday, that some of these things have been averted. And then, of course, with the standalone elections that were conducted before the run-up, the run-up to the 2019 general election, we could or we should be able to give commendation to INEC. Of course, democracy and its component, which is also the electioneering process, is an evolutionary process. It's not a destination, it's a journey. So gradually, as we move through it, we will be able to advance to that level. As a matter of fact, we should see the use of electronic voting throwing itself into the political space anytime soon.
All right, let me come to you very briefly. You know, the African and technology and his distrust of technology, sometimes very careful and all that. Very shortly, do you think the time given to master and familiarize themselves, talking about the hard work stuff, with some of these new technologies, do you think the time was enough?
Honestly, they were employed prior to the first cancelled election day.
Postponed.
Postponed. And I guess they still had more time for the second election date, which was yesterday. I believe, for God's sakes, let us give our kids some accolade. These are graduates of our universities, and I call them intellectuals. So basically, the teaching, the tutorials they had was enough for them to make them go. More so is the gadget in question. From our survey, from our reports, the smart card reader, as at yesterday's election, performed well in more than 90% of the cases. Because we need to know what the job of that smart card reader is. It's in 3 steps. Validate that this card is yours. Validate that this card is INEX. And validate your person. You see, the secondary aspect of not being able to find my name here or there, that warrants a situation of you appending your thumbprint to the manual register, is secondary in itself. Because the 3 steps of the smart card reader has proven your person and the smart card reader. So basically, we are getting...
It's a gatekeeper.
Yeah, the gatekeeper has already vetted you before it allowed you in. So as we speak, the smart card reader has done a good job in about 90% of the cases, and then we are moving on from there.
Okay, I understand that a report is ready from Sokoto, and that's from Abdurrahman Usman Jibrila. Is to give us an update on collation from Sokoto. It's over to you, Abdurrahman Usman Jibrila.
Good morning, studios. We are live here at the collation center of Sokoto North Senatorial District in Sokoto North local government area. It's exactly 9:22 a.m. this Sunday morning. As you can see, all party agents are seated and security operatives are sitting down as the collation commences with board collation officers presenting their results to the returning officer. We will keep you posted as the results coming in. Collation officers returning collation officers are presenting it to the returning officers.
We apologize. We lost signals from Sokoto Center there, where Abdurrahman Usman Jibrila was just giving us an update on the collation activities there. Very shortly, we will be joining my colleague in Makurdi, that's Ademola Adeoye, who is standing by. And this is also the time when I will beg to take my leave. Of course, having done the morning shift, my colleague Omini Oden will be taking over from here. Let me hand you over to Ademola Adeoye in Makurdi.
You and welcome to Makurdi NTA Network Center. This is Nigeria Decides. And I have in the studio with me the REC in Benue State, REC INEC Benue State, Dr. Netawe Yawalda. You are welcome to Nigeria Decides.
Thank you, Demola.
And also, I have an observer yesterday here in the studio to discuss about yesterday's elections. John O'Day is from the Center for Transparency Advocacy. You're welcome to Nigeria Decides.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's kick off with the wreck in Benue State. Dr. Yewalda, can you give us an overview of what happened yesterday?
The election was relatively peaceful. We deployed over 23,000 staff, both ad hoc and permanent staff of INEC, across 5,102 different destinations. We also have a situation where voting started at different times. Some start at 8 o'clock dot, some stages of time. But by 2 o'clock, we've achieved 99.98% start-off time across the interstate based on a support center. And this also proves to us also that compared to the previous election that we had, 2015 election, there's a massive improvement at Demola from what we had. We had 4 of our officers burned in 2015. This year we had none. We had 5 of our staff killed in 2015. This year we had none. We had 82 centers disrupted. This year we had none. We had 132 ad hoc staff kidnapped and taken hostage at different locations. This year we had none. This is a massive improvement from what we had last year, and we're hopeful that we keep on improving.
Okay, would you elections held in all the polling units in Benue State yesterday?
-4.
Okay.
We had carried a malfunction within those localities, and once it's 2 o'clock, by provision of the guidelines, electoral guideline for 2019 election, we have to stop and then reschedule it for within 24 hours, which we did today. And as I'm talking to you, an election taking place in all those 4 polling units.
Are they within the city center or just the outskirts?
No, we have 2 in Ubokolo.
Okay.
We have 1 in Apa, and we have 1 in Otupo, making 4.
Okay. Now let me to Mr. John O'Day. You were one of the observers yesterday.
Yes.
What did you observe?
Well, as an observer, I observed a lot of things, of course. But first of all, I want to commend all key actors that were on the field, because when we compare it to the previous elections in 2015, I got to notice that actually these key players were sensitized and prepared for the election, from the security, from the INEC officials right down to the security, and they played their part very, very well. And some of the challenges that we faced actually responded swiftly to it was a delay in senatorial ballot papers. That specifically in Ukbam in Guma local government. That's the council ward. It's a point where IDPs too came to vote from Daudu. So we had issues of that ballot papers not being present as at the time of accreditation. Okay. And what I observed again that even the voters too were sensitized, because when the party agents decided that okay, let's just do the accreditation and then while waiting for the ballot papers, but they unanimously disagreed that if they don't see the senatorial ballot papers, they are not going to vote. That is where I began to was marveled and said, okay, this year has been very, very good. INEC has done their work. And we had another challenge, what I observed again in the area of the card reader. Okay. Of course, it's something that happens over and over again, and it will still happen again because that area is an area where network has been a problem. So we had network issues with it, and then some cards too were not, the card reader was not picking some people's fingerprints, and then they resorted to, sometimes they resorted to manual checking the names and like that. But apart from all, it was very, very okay.
Dr. Yewalda, you want to speak to the issues he raised?
Yes, let me just the last one, which is, he said that they resorted to manual accreditation. It wasn't manual accreditation. What happened is that if you come into a polling unit with your own PVC and you tender it to the APO1, APO 1 who is supposed to check your card reader.
Yeah.
First, they confirm on the voter register that yes, it is yours by APO 2. They check and confirm that it's you. The picture is yours. The name is yours. The polling is yours. You hand over to the APO 1, who will now insert inside the card reader. The card reader also must confirm that that PVC belongs to that place. Okay. Then they will ask for your thumb on it, so they can scan it and confirm if it is yours. You compare your fingerprint from now and the previous one has been stored by INEC within registration. If there's a difference, normally it rejects it. But if the picture is yours, the card belongs to that place and everything, and the APO 1 substantially believe that the picture is yours, then you're allowed to thumb print on the voter register. And when you thumb print, you're allowed to vote. So that in case of forensic evidence required in terms of court processes, then we use that fingerprint against your name, which you've made, to indicate that you're the person. So it's still an electronic verification because the card has identified the person as belonging to that polling unit, but it's only rejecting on the fingerprint. And the fingerprint sometimes mark you have farmers in the villages that, depending on the period of the years, their hands, of course, the cells on their hands keep on varying depending on the period. Rainy season is harder, dry season is softer. So the marks on their fingers will keep on changing with periods. And these are the things that we're looking at. So INEC needs to also accommodate and create an inclusive possibility for everybody who wants to vote in Nigeria.
Actually, it was, from what we gathered yesterday, it was an all-inclusive exercise because we saw people at the IDPs, but there were issues relating to where the IDPs would vote, especially in Guatu and Gema local government. Were you able to resolve those issues?
Yeah, they were long resolved. We had even, in short, what we did was we threw the ownership to the communities that were displaced. I think, Demola, what people are missing is that people have this feeling that the camps are accommodating all the IDPs in Benue State. People are displaced. Most Nigerians, especially Benue State and North Central people, there's this blood relationship that, and lineages across communities. When somebody is displaced, instead of going to camp, he prefers to go and meet a relation who is kilometers away from him. So they go to neighboring communities, neighboring villages, friends, well-wishers, churches to go and stay with, primary schools that are accommodating within the vicinity. And mark you, even within clans, within communities, you have clannish relationship also. So we tell that within this clan, this village have relationship with our clan. So if we go there, we have that that fraternity that we could live with. Now, this informed the distribution, the pattern distribution of IDPs in Guma local government. Most of the displaced in one of the, I'll take one of the cases. We have one council ward, they call it Uvi. Uvi is a council ward in Guma. Most people displaced in that place are living in Makodi. They're not even living in Guma local government. And where they're living along Una Agri Road, around North Bank, not even close to Daudu, that you say is close to Makodi. Now, all of them, so what we did was that we asked each polling unit to choose where the people are more dominant, because we can't repeat a polling unit. We can only set up one polling unit as it is if people are displaced. So if they're displaced, where are they now? So each committee choose where they belong now. Like the UV people, 8 out of the 13 polling units, 8 say they are predominantly in that Ichwa. Say Ichwa. So we set up a polling unit for 8 of those polling units within that place. All right. Others say we left and we are within the local government, but in the next council ward. So they choose the location we gave them. So each place choose their location.
So
some
this
choose
location
IDP camps.
they're choosing, did it pose any challenge to INEC? in getting to...
No, we call stakeholders meeting.
Okay.
We call stakeholders meeting, we call religious leaders, traditional rulers, youth leaders, and then among displaced people, they have their own leadership also.
Okay.
So we brought the leadership in, we incorporate the leadership. We brought the CSOs who are also working with the IDPs, and we incorporate all these group people and other stakeholders, and we met.
Okay.
In the midst of this meeting, we now ask them, where do you feel more comfortable to vote? Where are people more dominant that you feel if we vote that we can get substantial number of people who are displaced to vote? And we tell them, hey, for this polling unit, we prefer so place.
Okay.
For this polling unit, we prefer so place. And that was how we, so it was actually an ownership of the IDPs, not actually INEC activity.
Okay, John Odek, how would you assess the turnout of women, the elderly, and the physically challenged people yesterday?
Well, I must say it's commendable, because when I got there on my arrival, I did not see much people on the polling unit. But as 1 hour later, they trooped in mass.
Okay.
And the way the voting started, they all accepted themselves there from observations. They accepted that the people with disabilities should vote first, the aged, and then the women should vote first before other people should vote. So the women actually came out in mass.
Gender friendly?
Gender friendly.
Okay, now let's look at the issue of voter education. Were people well enlightened, concerning this election? How did you go about it?
Demola, we have a long way to go. I've met a woman who is over 70 years and she has never voted.
70 years
yes.
and never
she has
voted.
never voted. She doesn't know how a ballot paper looks like. And she was displaced. She was now in a camp.
Wow.
And she has never seen a ballot paper before. She's never bothered to see how people vote. She doesn't know how people even vote. So every year we're bringing in new voters into the folds.
So, okay.
But
so
not just the youths.
Okay.
No. When Nigerians keep on saying that, address voter education among the 18 years, people or 16 years coming to 18 years coming, we're joking. Not even just the educated, not the illiterate, and farmers or rural poor, even among the affluent. It will shock you. I went to a bank. Now, on the counter, I discussed with about 8 bankers. No PVCs. And they don't have PVC. They didn't vote 2015, and they said they don't want to even know that they will not vote.
They don't see any reason.
They don't see any reason to vote in 2019. They feel the business they do may not require voting, but good governance prospers their banks and their businesses. So every aspect of their life is driven by good governance or by the election that they never participated.
Okay. Now, what about the coalition now? How far have you gone?
As it stands now, as I'm talking to you, almost all the local governments, 23 of them, they are at local government stage, collating at local government. Some of them have moved to senatorial districts. That's Federal House Representative district of declaration centers. And we are waiting to start that of the state, which once they come in, of course, we will do it. But having said that, most importantly, is that the process has been peaceful. Political parties have been friendly to themselves. In short, I was shocked during distribution materials at Central Bank on Wednesday. They bought food for themselves. The political parties.
They bought food for themselves.
Yes, they exchanged food. So somebody bought early in the morning, another person bought later for themselves, and they were all smiling and chatting. And I told them, I said, hey, this is how to go about it. Making yourself friends and then talking to each other so that let the fraternity start from here.
Because Benue State is one of the states that people thought would be a bit difficult because of the challenge from the two major parties, the PDP and the APC. Because the sitting governor is on the PDP and the main contender is the APC. But it seems everything went smoothly yesterday.
I think first thing is for us, we in INEC to be neutral.
Okay.
And we stood our ground to be neutral. And both parties know that we're neutral, which is very important. And we dispel the fears of everybody who was around and keep on building confidence among the people that we're going to be neutral, and we stood by it, that we remain neutral. That's very important for us as INEC. Secondly, we did a lot of voting. Okay, let me start this January to February.
Yeah.
We had a meeting with the youths. We selected 100 youth leaders across the entire state. We had a one-day workshop for them on peaceful election. They had their communique at the end of it. We invited 100 women leaders across the entire local government of the state. We had a workshop for them. You know, the trend is TOT. Train the trainer. They go back to their own various organizations and they retrain people. We had, 54 traditional rulers, first class, second class, third class chiefs in the state. They met, and we had a meeting with them. They went back to also work on their subjects. We had another one for women, for people, physically challenged people. Then we now set up a door-to-door campaign, and we paid people to do it across the entire local government of the state. We did market square movement. I as a person, I was on streets.
You were on the streets.
I was looking at people's homes.
Okay, let me just pause you there. Let's take this report, then we can speak to it, and you can continue from where you stopped. Because this report says from the Benue South Senatorial District, Achigili Magaji, who covered the proceedings, reports that a major collation center at Olayega, Edumoga in Okpoku local government area was burnt down about 24 hours to the elections. This made it in the community to cast their votes. Let's see the report.
We are having feelers from one of the communities, particularly Olanyega, where we heard that hoodlums invaded the community and burnt down some important installations and buildings, like the courthouse, the transformer, and the primary school, which incidentally serves as collation center for the community. We have spoken to some of the community members earlier.
The incident that has taken place has affected my community and my people of the right of vote, because as the traditional headquarters of Edinburgh, this is a coalition center. The INEC in Benue State were able to transfer the polling unit here to about 2 kilometers up to 5 kilometers away to enable the communities cast their vote. We really appreciate that urgent effort by the INEC office in Benue State. Anytime there is voting and there is displacement, it's very, very unfortunate, because the population that is needed to vote will not be available.
This is the Benue State Polytechnic Ubokolo polling unit in Okpoku local government area of Benue State, north central Nigeria. The process of accreditation and voting has taken off simultaneously. Everything is calm and there are no security issues here. We have some of the already cast their votes here.
This is a wonderful process here. It's very peaceful, and the INEC people, I think, have been very, very careful and dexterous. The voters too are conducting themselves very orderly. I'm impressed by the turnout. The process is peaceful. There's no problem. There's no problem of any kind, and by the grace of God, there won't be any problem at the end.
Also, in other parts of the area, the exercise has been smooth.
I believe that the postponing of this election was a divine arrangement, and it is now very clear to show that the INEC are really ready.
Meanwhile, in Otupo and its environs, there were challenges.
At stage, things were moving well, but for now, some area boys like that, they're trying to disorganize the polling unit. And aside from that, we're having issues with card reader.
And you can see, if you look around now, a lot of people are still waiting because the process is too delayed. People are being stressed out.
As at the time of filing this report, the process of collation has started in many centers.
So we just saw that brief report about the situation in those districts where there was a burnt down of collation center. Were you aware of this?
Yes, that was 48 election. Okay. And none of our materials is there. So it has nothing to do with INEC. So it has, it has nothing to do with INEC. They burned a transformer close by within the community. I don't know what really happened, but it has nothing to do with INEC at all because none of material was there when that happened. So when we went to the community and discovered that it was supposed to be one of our racks, that's the restrict area center where we should count our ad hoc staff, we just changed the location to a new place, and we're comfortable.
In 2015, the election was adjudged free, fair, and credible. This is 2019. What's your view?
My view for this 2019 election, so far in Benue State, I don't know about all the states. It's free, fair, and credible.
Yeah.
I need to say.
Free, fair, and credible. Your last word, Dr. Yawalda.
My last word is for people in Benue, just keep their trust in INEC. We'll keep on improving. We're not saying we're 100% there, but we keep on improving.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming on Nigeria Decides. We now go back to our Abuja Center for more on Nigeria Decides. I hand over to Omini Ode.
Thank you, Demola. That was a wonderful one, and we believe that people have been kept up to speed, and we also enjoyed your line of thought. Back here in Abuja, I'm being joined by Musbah Danwahab.
It's good to be here again, Omni, and we've been bringing reports to you from across the country, and our network, zonal network centers too, have been bringing so many perspectives to the issues around the 2019 general elections. That trajectory will continue, and I will bring you more.
And actually, will I say that we joined, and we now joined Dr. Mukhtar Imam of the Department of International Relations at Diplomacy-based University. Thanks for being here.
Welcome.
And also Bola Bakare, President, truth be told. Good to be here.
He's been telling the truth since.
Well, just like we said, the Nigerian Television Authority is there to keep Nigerians up to speed with development rising from. It's a build-up, and the tensions that were right up there are gradually dying down, and we believe that in a matter of hours, we'll be going to the coalition center. But for now, we'll sustain the studio discussions. Guests, our plethora of guests who are coming from all the divide in the country.
Tight security to ensure that there is no breakdown of law and order. The business hope to continue until probably much later when the announcing result rather the winner for the 2019 International Assembly election conducted in the Sarawa South Senatorial District. This situation here will move around to other coalition centers and keep you fresh with the happenings around the city center. This is
thanks a lot, Abubakar Usman Akwanga from Lafia. We expect more as the coalition continues in that part of the country. Now, just getting in is that INEC has rescheduled elections in 77 polling units across some 10 local government areas of Zamfara State.
Okay. And as we, across the country, everybody's waiting to hear what the results will look like eventually as the day progresses. But quickly, let me get to Bakare. Now, Bakare, this election has been a huge and massive deployment.
Yes.
Financial, logistics, and but I like looking at it from this perspective. Comparatively, 1999, 2003, 2007, 2015, and 2019. Would you say gradually, as the democratic culture in Nigeria is building up, the electoral governance is also building up?
Thank you, my brother. And once again, glad to be here. You're just coming in. Over the years, honestly and truthfully, we've been able to improve as we go. The latest inclusion is the electronic factor, going a little bit farther. You're making the electoral process something more conducive, something faster, and something that people can believe in as being free, fair, and credible. Honestly, when we were muting the idea of smart card readers, most Nigerians went haywire. They were saying, no, it's not going to work. It's going to be an easy access for people to manipulate votes. But over 2 sessions that we've had it now, it has become our saving grace. Because right now, as we speak in 2019, because the best test cases were 2015 and 2019, what we're having now is a grand improvement on what we had in 2015. As we speak, from our own researches, analyses, and our people on ground, as we speak, 90%, the smart card reader performed 90% plus as we speak in these elections. And honestly, that goes to tell you that of the people that were registered and the people that were voted, 90% were properly accredited. You see, the secondary factor of saying, okay, at the end of the day, the smart card reader has been able to prove that the smart card, your PVC is good, you are the person who owns it, and INEC can read that. Once we have those 3 factors in place, the other factor of maybe your thumbprint, maybe you add ACPO that blocks your thumbprint. We can leave that aside. The manual register can always be used after, don't forget this, after the smart card reader has verified your PVC and your person. So in actual fact, the element of those analog days of paper, ballot box snatching, or swapping papers, or days, we've moved ahead from that to the smart card reader in 2015, which delivered reasonably, to the smart card reader in 2019, which delivered as at 90%, and that is close to it. In school, if you get 90%, I wonder what your professor will give to you, maybe A++, or whatever.
Okay.
So I guess we're doing good as we speak.
Yeah. Before I allow Musbah to take his line of questions, let me come to Dr. Mukhtar. Media deployment for elections over the years. I remember vividly what used to transpire then. We need to rely on a couple of reports that will come by road, but now we find that across the big platforms like the NTA, the small platforms like others, have done everything to ensure that by split seconds, you're getting it from there.
Yeah.
In a matter of seconds. So how will you compare the media deployments then and now with specific analysis at the NTA?
Yeah. Okay, that's you being biased now.
I'm not being biased.
Okay. All right, then. I am sitting in NTA.
You are in NTA.
Of course, I should give kudos and credit to NTA.
This is your best point of reference.
Well, truth be told, I think we have evolved. Tremendous efforts have been thrown in. And as the people in the tech world will say, thank God for God and thank God for technology. Technology has played a very significant role in our lives as far as human evolution is concerned, not just with our electioneering processes and so on and so forth. It has helped. As a matter of fact, a lot of factors or variables have been pointed at or fingered at as being rationale for the explosion, if you would want to call it that, in the consciousness and awareness that people have gotten today that have basically endeared people to the democratic process and the electioneering process. As a matter of fact, the reality is the political culture has changed tremendously, and technology has played a significant role in bringing about that. The new media, if you like, and of course, the old media itself is housing all of these things, and so it's coming from within, and it's enlightening a lot of people out there. And so, yes, to come to your question, the media coverage is doing fantastically well as far as the progression from the period in which we started our democratic journey to where we are now. It's nothing comparable, not at all, not in the slightest. Given, looking at it from that technological angle, a lot of factors have basically played out. We did not think about, like you mentioned, tinkering with the idea of smart card readers and so on and so forth. So yes, we are getting gradually to that point where we will climax. As a matter of fact, democracy in itself is not a destination, it's a journey. And all of the attributes and all of the projections within that democratic journey are things that would have to evolve with time. And it will require consolidated effort from actors, well, all stakeholders in the Nigerian project. So it requires the media, it requires the CSO, it requires the electorates, and those who will be elected into public offices to bring about that reality. In 2000, who would have thought? I mean, philosophers from Western climes told us that for us to be able to advance to this stage of democracy, we have to move through an autocratic regime, not just us in Africa, but even in the Middle East as well. These things were said, that you have to move through an autocratic system, in through a secular system, before you you can advance to where we are. Who would have thought that from the period of 1999 to 2019 we will be able to advance to this level where we are? So tremendously we have grown, we have moved. I mean, in 2015 we conducted one of the elections that was alluded the freest and fairest around the world. At the time, the United States was contesting the outcome of an election.
That's right.
This is an election that people have said, I mean, this is a country where the likes of Francis Fukuyama have said this is the height of democracy. We have shown them something.
Well, we'll sustain a couple of this line of thought, and when we return from Enugu, where we are going to now, Mosba will begin the engagements by that segment. So we hear Ifeanyi Okafor is ready in the coal city, Enugu, southeast Nigeria. Hello, Ifeanyi.
Hello, Mini. Thank you so much. This is Enugu Network Center of the Nigeria Decides studio. I am Ifeanyi Okafor. Now, the 2019 presidential and National Assembly elections finally took place. The 23rd of February 2019 has indeed gone down in Nigeria's history as yet another landmark date towards Nigeria's democratic experience. Here in the southeast, the elections were judged as largely peaceful and relatively incident-free, with reports of late start of the exercise in some centers, but successful electoral process at the end, except in a few areas, though. Now, reports have also indicated that the turnout of voters as compared to 2015 was quite commendable. Now, however, we have a guest here with us. Emeka Enechi is a public affairs analyst, and we will together review the elections in the zone. You're welcome to our Nigeria Decide studio.
Fine, thank you.
Now, let's hear your reactions and exercise.
First of all, I want to congratulate Nigerians and commend them for the patience to turn out again for a rescheduled election. And I'd like to say that largely in southeast Nigeria, we've not heard of incidences that are unbecoming of Democrats. So building on that, I would say that our democratic credentials are growing steadily. Nigerians must understand that democracy is not a revolution. It grows by increments. So we've had 2015, we've now had 2019. Well, 2019 hasn't quite finished because we still have some other elections in the next couple of weeks. But my belief is that we can use this as a springboard to further grow our democracy and the electoral process.
Okay, Enechi, in your opinion, are we as a people adequately prepared for the outcome of the election in spite of where the pendulum swings?
Democracy is a contest of ideas, and once you've chosen this system of government, you have no choice than to respect the will of the people. And so wherever the pendulum swings, there will be no reason whatsoever for any person or group to say we reject this. Except, of course, you can establish anything that goes against the Electoral Act or the laws of the land, and then otherwise we wait for another 4 years and see what happens.
Okay, now with collation and counting ongoing, for how long do you think this process will go on?
I would think that the system does not want Nigerians to be fatigued. So there is no reason, at least INEC has not said, that there are reasons inhibiting them from going ahead to get these results sorted out. So my expectation would be that by noon of Monday, we should have concluded this, except there are certain areas where we have difficulties, and that will be understandable. However,
you just heard about Zamfara and a few other areas in the...
Yeah, the Zamfara election, which has been rescheduled in 77 polling units across 7 local governments, may not necessarily affect the result of the big one.
But looking here in the southeast zone, we have similar issues here in Anambra State, I believe, and some other areas.
Again, that may not affect the big one. So it may not have any impact on the presidential election, which Nigerians are eager
to know what the result is. The feeling which, if I waited for 4 years to get here, and we now have to another couple of weeks to conclude it, oh, well, good, we'll do that.
Now, there's this issue of thuggery and snatching, stuffing of ballot boxes, which is actually a very sad decimal in our efforts towards democracy. Now, how can this be effectively checked, particularly looking at the requirements of the security agencies in this regard?
I would think that to avoid violence or cause violence at elections, the political parties need not wait until a few months to elections before they engage their voters. Now, we now know that in 2023, we will have elections. So democracy is not about voting. It's a process. There's a whole lot in democracy. And so
it's not about voting alone.
It's not just about voting alone. So it's not about winning. When you go into an electoral contest, what you're trying to say is, these are my ideas. And now people are free to accept or reject your ideas. If you now introduce violence into it, it would mean that you have not educated your followers that while we think that our ideas are supreme, it may well be that everything that we know is wrong, that some other guys have better ideas. And if people agree with them, we can go back and look at the overall thing in our own project and say, oh, where can we improve? So that next time we'll be better at it. But most importantly is that political parties, the various stakeholders in the electoral process, the NGOs and all that, they need to start engaging now for 2023, educating the people that there's no use to suffer any form of violence or carry a violent act against your fellow citizens. And again, if you look at the majority of Nigerians are actually in the rural areas. And so where I come from, for instance, if there was violence in Eke, perpetrated by either any of the parties, you're going to harm your own people.
So are you by this saying that there needs to be more education of the electorate in terms of...
voter education, yes, it's very important. And it should not be left for INEC alone. The political parties need to come into this. That's my thinking.
Okay, now we're not done yet. We'll take a mini documentary on the political history of Enugu State, and then we'll go back to our discussion soon after that.
Enugu State, southeast Nigeria, was created out of the old Anambra State by the then military president Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida on August 27, 1991. This state creation quelled the agitations of the Enugu people for administrative and cultural independence. Enugu State is popularly known as the Coal City State due to the preponderance of coal found in layers underneath its soil. Literally, however, Enugu means Enugu, that is, top of the hill. This beautiful virgin land with lush green trees lining its landscape is sitting proudly on top of hilly ranges of Udi, Ogo, and Nsukka hills. Enugu was by 1929 the administrative headquarters of the eastern region and has remained the political hub of the southeastern state. The political history of Enugu State can be streamlined into two phases: the military and the civilian governance. Enugu State had 5 military administrators and 4 civilian governors. Colonel Herbert Obieze, September 1990 to January 1992. Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo, who became in history the first executive civilian governor of the newly created Enugu State in January 1992 to January 1994. The military took over power once again through a coup d'etat which saw the emergence of Navy Captain Temieja as administrator in January 1994 to September 1994. Temieja was then followed by Colonel Mike Torre, who took over the reins of Enugu governance from September 1994 to August 1996. Military rule still on, Colonel Sule Ahman assumed office in August 1996 and left in August 1998. Navy Captain Benson Agbaje came on board August 1998 to May 1999. Then it was time to take a breath of fresh air. Democracy beckoned on the nation, Nigeria. The 1999 general elections saw the emergence of Chimaroke Nnamani as executive governor of Enugu State. After 8 years of governance, in 2007, another democratically elected governor was elected. He was Sullivan Ihanacho Chime. Sullivan's 8 years of governance in Enugu brought about a general development and civility in the coal city.
Babangida came and created Ebonyi State, which excised Abakaliki from the equilibrium. But now we're in a new Enugu State. New Enugu State comprises of 3 senatorial zones: Enugu West, Enugu East, Enugu North. And I think we can also maintain the same triangular equilibrium. And efforts have been made to do it. But unfortunately, we have a history of, time is for us to put our minds back. Either by commission or omission, some of our leaders did things that I'm sure they will be regretting now.
Then and now, there is an improvement. And when I say an improvement, it's not an improvement of individual leaders. It's an improvement in the citizenry awareness of what democracy is all about.
Democracy thrived uninterrupted. In 2015, Ifeanyi Lawrence Ugwanyi took over the mantle of leadership of Enugu State till date.
Strategic partnership rather than several and international agencies to stimulate rapid growth, especially in ICT, biotechnology, and engineering sector.
It will be pertinent to mention some of the administrators behind the evolution of Enugu. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Dr. Akanu Ibiam, Dr. Michael Okpara, Ikemba Odumegwu Ojukwu, Chief Jim Ifeanyi Chukwu Nwobodo, who was elected governor, Old Anambra State. Late Chief Christian Ono, who was the shortest serving governor of the Old Anambra State.
There is peace in Enugu. Even when you are in different parties, when you meet, there is no war. There is peace. And I believe that the election this year will be peaceful. I don't have any doubt about it. I don't have any doubt.
Presently, Enugu State is divided into 3 political zones: Enugu North, Enugu East, and Enugu West. Out of the 36 states in Nigeria and the federal capital, Enugu, the coal city state, has been adjudged the most peaceful. Hence, it serves as home to all Ndibo, home and in the diaspora. Enugu State, as a virile virgin, has embraced civilization and sophistication slowly but surely.
Now, we just saw the political history of Enugu State, quite informative. Now, it's 20 years of unbroken democracy, and Nigeria is indeed moving forward.
Yes, Nigeria is moving forward, and one of the beauties of democracy is, like you saw in that documentary, the former governor, Okweslezo, talking about citizenry awareness. And so people are now able to ask questions and expect answers. And so what democracy has helped us to do is attempt to break down the pyramid structure. And so, like I said before, it's a contest of ideas. Even while the government is in place, the reason why you have opposition is to bring the status quo to rise above itself. One of the challenges we have here is that we run what I describe as a zero-sum game, winner takes all. However, administrations ought to understand that when they are being challenged on their policies, those challenging them are not doing that because of selfish reasons. It is that we are expected to rise above ourselves for the better good of the people. And Enugu has grown from what it was when we were kids running around the various places now that have buildings and all that, and factories. And we have also had some visionary people around the state. I was just surprised that in that documentary, no mention was made of Kwabasika,
okay.
Who left his job, as it were, in UCLA and came here to work.
Yes.
And what a lot of people don't know is that whilst he was here, he never took a salary from the administration of East Central State. That he was getting paid by the University of Ibadan, so which is commendable. It's quite commendable. So we have grown and we will continue to grow. What we now seek from the players in Enugu State or in Southeast Nigeria is that we need to step away from crying marginalization, all the time and say, okay, the resources that we have, which we get even from the center, how have it been applied? And if the Southeast zone needs to make progress, we also need to understand that in the view of great men like Zeke and Okpara, that there may be a handshake with other parts of the country.
Definitely.
So you can't sit in your house and put all your eggs in one basket, and when that basket falls down, you start screaming, I'm not getting any eggs. Of course you won't be able to get eggs. And
so there must be a kind of cooperation and cohesion.
Yeah, and our history also is happened for the war in Nigeria. We need to look at what Japan did after the Second World War, what Germany did. They didn't go back fighting the mainstream forces.
Yes.
They said, okay, we lost this thing. How can we become giants again? And there is no doubt that Germany is the biggest economy in Europe. And their products, destroyed the surface of the earth. Japan, we know. So we need to come home and tell ourselves some home truths.
Let me bring you back to what we were discussing before we went on the mini documentary. Now, looking at the issue of thuggery and snatching of ballot boxes. Now, some have actually called for very stiff sanctions and prosecution of electoral offenders in elections as a way to improve the process and show guarantee credibility. Now, what's your reaction to that?
If I were to look at what Mr. President said in his broadcast before the elections, electoral ballot box snatchers need to be dealt with decisively there and then. And there have been a lot of people crying, why would he say such a thing? And until somebody becomes a victim of crime, one will not understand the seriousness to which we should attach this. If a guy decides that he wants to go and snatch a ballot box, what he's saying essentially is, I want to postpone the future of people. I want to deny people their voice. And such people, if you ask me, do not belong to this planet. They need to go somewhere else where brute is the only solution. If you sell your idea to somebody and the person says no, as a matter of fact, if your idea must be enforced by violence, then your idea is worth nothing. It's worth absolutely nothing.
Okay, now, has Nigeria's electoral body, INEC, lived up to its mandate? And are there lessons to be learned in the successes and shortcomings in this last election?
There will always be lessons to be learned in anything you do. INEC 2019 has really tried. When we look at where we're coming from, the impunity that we used to find with INEC before is no longer there. I mean, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu had consistently been able to address the stakeholders and Nigerians on what his plans were. Are there places where there were lapses? Yes. I mean, postponing an election is a massive, massive issue. Even if you take it to the mundane, trivial level, the woman who says Akara, who didn't come out on that Saturday, her business was stifled because she now had to stay at home on the second Saturday. So, and for even individuals who may only have 1 or 2 naira to buy that akara, and that's all the media have on that day, they couldn't get that. So, INEC will need to rise above itself this time around to say, okay, now that INEC has decided to fix elections, we now know that the second week in February of 2023 is an election. So we don't want to come on the day or a week before they say, oh, something else has happened, we can't have it. If there's anything that they know now may stop them, they might as well let us know now so we need to battle it.
Sure, work towards it.
Yeah.
Now, there are a total of 91 political parties. However, many were unable to field their presidential candidates in yesterday's election. Very quickly, what do you advise about these political parties going forward now?
Well, the Electoral Act is also very clear that if at the end of the elections you're not able to produce even a councillor, the party is now no longer a party. But going forward as well, I think that the country needs to go towards independent candidates. So you no longer have to have a political party to run for elections. And that's very important.
Okay, now finally, what was the mood of people in your area? You know, it's a day after the elections, and a drive-through town indicates that people are going about their businesses as they await the outcome of the elections.
People are expectant that the votes they cast, will count. But they have expectation that it will count. They're not guessing that something may happen. And that was also a credit to INEC. That nobody's saying there might be some, because evidently people now understand that the shenanigans that used to go around no longer work. So you go to the electorate and campaign with them. If they buy your idea, they'll vote for you. So we are expecting and we're hopeful.
All right, I want to thank you, Emeka Inechi, public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for being our guest on Nigeria Decides.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, it's back to you, Omini in Abuja.
Ifeanyi, thank you so much. It was quite illuminating there, seeing those documentaries you gave us on the evolution of Enugu State from where it was to what it is today. Well, back in Abuja, we are going to sustain a couple of discussions, but before then, let me hand over to Musbah Donhab to take a couple of updates.
Okay, just let's keep you abreast of this, get into our studio, and is that elections are taking place as we speak today in Zawan B in Jos South local government and Ataka in Riom local government areas of Plateau State. The elections were postponed by INEC till today following protest in the area that is taking place now. We're going to discuss that, but first let's go to Edo now to hear update from Edo North Collation Center, and we have David Dire to give us that update.
At the collation center now, and this collation center is playing dual capacity. It is first the collation center for Esako West local government, and also the collation center for the National Assembly elections, that is the House of Representatives and that of the Senate. We have in this senatorial district 6 local governments that are to bring their results here for collation. What is going on inside presently is the collation of the result of Esako West local government, which is first to be concluded before the returning officer in charge of the senatorial district will take the stage to collate results from the various local governments under the senatorial district. While the collation of results for Akoko Edo Federal Constituency is taking place in Akoko Edo local government, that of Owa is going on presently at Afuzi. Well, we have the collation center here also for Esako Federal Constituency, which comprises of Esako West, Esako Central, and Esako East local government. Not until those federal constituencies are completed, there will be no room for the collation of the senatorial result. By implication, compilation of the senatorial result is likely to be much more later than today. But the situation here is generally peaceful, it is calm, it is orderly. Adequate security everywhere, And the party agents are also conducting themselves in such a way that the exercise will be hitch-free. We'll continue to give you updates as the situation progresses.
David Aire from Edo North Collation Center, thanks a lot, and we continue to expect more from you. Before we went for that, we talked about elections taking place right now as we're speaking in Plateau State in some local governments. That's Riyom and Zawambi in Jos South local government area. We also talked about rescheduling of election in 77 polling units across 10 local government areas of Zamfara State. Now, let me come to Mr. Bakare. We are seeing this happening again, election taking place the second day after the actual date. Can we really say democracy is growing in Nigeria? Yes, we're having this awareness, like Dr. Imam already talked about the technological aspect of that. Can we say democracy is growing? We're still having this spate of violence, protests, and all that.
My answer is absolutely yes. This is the necessary dynamics of electioneering.
We have to say violence, you mean?
Not violence per se, disruption. What happens if there's a thunderstorm? Won't you reschedule? Factor that into it. There are natural factors, there are human factors. I was saying something earlier before you guys got here, that don't you ever forget the devil is still alive. And there are people the devil will use. And there are people God will use. And there are people we want God to use. God gave us INEC, and that is where, in situations where we have disruptions, INEC is quick to come on board. That, okay, there is a disruption here, by commission, omission, or by design. I am ready to do my work. That is why it comes up, oh, there's going to be a reschedule. There's going to be a supplementary. Those are things we would like to see. As much as over time, the past 1 week or 8 days thereabout, everybody will be berating INEC for doing this or doing that. Honestly, that job is humongous. The job is humongous. It's huge. Some school of thought were even saying, isn't it high time we kind of cut INEC up so that they can have a kind of a sense of direction that, okay, one body is going to do this, one body is going to do that. When it comes to litigations, when it comes to party registrations, when it comes to things like this.
Okay, you're actually talking about the humongous nature of the work that INEC has got to do. But yes, isn't that why we have so many departments, and taking into consideration that election takes place 4 years apart? So why don't we have enough time to prepare for all of this?
My brother, in this world that we are living in, there is always room for contingencies. And contingencies, if you plan for contingencies, it means there are bound to be situations that will not go as planned. Honestly, there is nothing on earth. Maybe when you were growing up, you were thinking, when I grow up, I'll marry this, I'll live in Victoria Island, I'll have 2 cars, I'll have this, I'll have 5 kids. By the time you get grown and you get married, you will start knowing all the factors that affects those things. Those are your dreams. The aspiration, the policy of INEC
come face to face with the reality.
Everything is there written. You have to take this, INEC, you take this to point A to point B. What happens? The airline or the plane gets faulty. What happens? The weather was not conducive. What happens? Some thugs, some devil incarnate are burning the vehicles that will move the materials, maybe from the local government level to the ward level. Something happens along the line. For God's sake, contingencies, we have to take care of that. All your plans are directional. If you have it on board, oh, this goes down 2 ways, this goes down 4 ways, this goes down 8 ways. For God's sake, what happens if there is a breach along the line? You improvise as you go. So basically, like right now, INEC is doing what it should be doing. Violence is not INEC induced. I don't want to lay blame here. Maybe by political parties, maybe by people who are so hell-bent on getting that, the do-or-die factor. But the thing is, INEC is there ready. If there is violence, let's see what we can do to overturn it. If there is a situation on end that doesn't make it conducive for that particular day, let's douse the violence.
Let's douse it.
And then the next day, I am there ready to happen. Like you rightly said now in Zamfara, 77 PUs, over 10 LGs on hold. But INEC is there ready for a reschedule and then to get done.
Shortly we are going to
Lagos.
But before we go to Lagos, let me highlight this. Elections are being collated, the results are being collated across the country now.
Yes.
And like Musbao said in one of the reports, some elections are going on that were rescheduled for today. Because
yes, in Plateau.
But we need to caution. The constitutional body that has the mandate to conduct elections and announce results is the Independent National Electoral Commission.
Yes.
And I remember in one of the daily briefings shortly before the rescheduled date by the chairman of INEC was a consistent reminder that INEC has the right and the mandate to announce results. So many results are being churned out in the social media and what have you. So by way of caution, what would you say to Nigerians?
Well, I hope Nigerians listen. I'd urge, again, like you've said it all, INEC is the only body that has the mandatorily responsible to announce results of elections. Whatever thing that's going on the social media and any other media for that matter is just going to create unnecessary hype and tension. It's going to exacerbate the already existing apprehension. So I think we should all try and pipe it down. We've waited for this for how long? 3 years thereabout. We've gone to the polling units, we've casted our votes and so forth. I think it's at this point, Hausa people will say it gets hotter. This is to translate it when the haircut comes.
Let's get that first.
In Hausa?
Yes.
Okay. Ask goshi. You know, that's like, it gets even more difficult when the haircut comes to the front. So basically what you find is a lot of people have this inbuilt desire to give out information. Let me be the first to put it out there. Let me try to oppose the other person who's in the other party. Let me try to taunt them and things like that. And then in the course of doing these things, we find that we begin to grow the tension, and then it escalates to a level where we cannot control, God forbid. So I would urge that people try to maintain caution in the course of giving out information. It's not your duty, it's not your responsibility. You're trying to be the social perfect, social media hyped guy on Twitter and on Facebook who gets a lot of comments for the things he does. But again, like you mentioned, I think we need to hold our brakes, we need to shield our swords, we need to hold on for the body that we, on our own, through the instrument of government, gave the responsibility to say, you can conduct these things and announce. Please, was civil enough to do that.
All right, we told you earlier on that INEC has rescheduled elections in 77 polling units across some 10 local government areas of Zamfara State. Let's get some more details into that from our reporter there.
I'm now at the Zamfara State office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The Presidential and National Assembly election in the state is not yet over, as the exercise did not take place in a number of polling units across some 10 local government areas of the state. With me is the head of Publicity and Voter Education State Office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Malam Garba Galadima, who will tell us more on why and where this problem occurs.
As you are aware, and we have on 20 directives from headquarters that we should include the APC candidates. We had to retrieve all those ballot papers and load them with the ones where the APC candidates appear. That's why we were not able to dispatch all the sensitive materials to the local government areas on time. It was only on Friday by noon, 12 noon, that we were able to see that all the trucks left the CBN to the local government area. So that actually affected the distribution of the materials down to the presiding officers at the polling units.
So is the sole reason?
One of the reasons is that is late arrival of the sensitive materials to the polling units. Another problem is the malfunctioning of the smart card readers in some of the polling units where the elections were built to take place. And another one is the issue of banditry. Everybody knows the issue of Zamfara State. So we had to reschedule the election of some of those polling units in the affected 10 local government areas to today. So now the election is taking place.
How many polling units are affected?
Roughly we have 77 polling units affected.
So now what is the situation? Have you mobilized your staff to the affected areas? For
already we have all the staff on the ground who will conduct the elections, and they are now doing their job. So we hope that by the end of the day, everything will be in order.
Collation of the presidential election result is scheduled to commence here this morning. What is the situation now?
Okay, you know, I said 10 local government areas have been affected. So if we start collecting the result from the collation officers, you know that we have to wait for the other local government areas to bring their results. So that's why we have decided to shift the time from 10 a.m. to some time later in the day that we will commence the collation.
Thank you, sir. I've been speaking with the head of publicity and voter education for the State Office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Malam Garba Galadima, on the prevailing situation here in Zamfara State. As you have heard from him, the election did not take place in 77 polling units across some 10 local government areas of the state, and the election is currently taking place in the affected areas. We'll keep you updated as we go around the affected polling units to assess the situation there.
Thank you very much for that update. Elections are taking place in 77 polling units across 10 local government areas of Zamfara State, and also taking place in 2 local government areas in Plateau State, where elections in Ekiti State have announced the results collected.
We await the collation of the results with patience. We are afforded the opportunity to pause, review, and learn from what has happened so far. Don't forget that the gubernatorial and House of Assembly elections are around the corner, and the intent should be to learn from the recent past in order to have a better outing. Now, to reflect on the pertinent issues of the day, I am joined by a panel of discussants. But before we go to these eminent discussants, let's take the most pressing story. And the electorate at Koshofe local government area has expressed satisfaction with the conduct of the elections. Abolore Ogbara monitored the collation of the results, and here is her report.
This is Ogudu in Koshofe local government. Voters have exercised their civic responsibility. It is now time for the summation of votes cast and collation of results. Behind me, you will see Lagos residents standing by to ensure that their votes are counted. With me, I have Mr. Emmanuel Eze. So, sir, what do you think about the mood, here today?
Yeah, voting here has been very peaceful and orderly, and there are no problems at all.
You can see that even those that want to even snatch ballot boxes are automatically playing footballs on the main roads, which is, good enough for us. We saw the military people on the road, the policemen are doing their work, and then the INEC, they had also been very cooperative. They came to their venues early enough.
I voted. I said I will stay here until all the votes counted, and the result declared. You can see I have my own result for the presidency.
Amazing.
So you can say I'm also an INEC man for this purpose.
The collection of results today have shown a very high level of leadership, management, and a sense of accountability and seriousness.
It's not bad. It's peaceful enough.
When you hear the final results, what's going to happen?
If it is my own choice, the party that I voted in, then I have to be happy. I will jubilate. Yes.
But if not?
Actually, I won't be happy.
In Lagos, Abolore Ogbara, NTA News.
Thank you very much, Abolore Ogbara, for that report. As I said earlier on, I have with me a distinguished panel of discussants. On my right first is Sheye Banjoko, a lawyer and a politician of the future. Next to Sheye is Mr. Lawrence Emenike, a public affairs commentator. And next to him is Chief Festus Okore, a public analyst. He's also the Public Relations Officer of the Lagos branch of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Well, gentlemen, let's open the floodgates. First of all, Chief Festus Okore, I have never heard of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, but something tells me that you had some form of synergy with INEC. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are very correct. I am surprised to hear that some people in Nigeria have not heard about Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. It has existed in this country for about 50 years. The headquarters is in UK. We operated then under Royal Charter up to this moment anyway. But there is a move. The National Assembly has passed the bill on the local charter, and I think it's with the presidency.
Why did it take you 50 years? If you have been that effective?
Yeah, we have a serious problem. The problem in this country, if you ask me now, we may not have had the transport policy for this country.
But before, I mean, in pre-air discussions, you were telling me about some workshops you organized to benefit the activities of INEC, particularly for this election.
Actually, in 2016, the CILT Nigeria organized a workshop for this 2019 elections for the INEC.
Did they take advantage of it?
Yeah, well, of course, this workshop involved all the commissioners of INEC from all over the Federation, especially the logistics department, the operations department of this. So when we were surprised that the INEC chairman, hinged the failure of this on that. That is what made us either believe that maybe they didn't take much advantage of that workshop, the workshop that lasted for 5 days in this Lagos on logistics.
Okay, you know, the praises have been effusive, Lawrence. INEC has collected a lot of kudos because, according to reports, the outturn was very impressive. You seem to have a different view.
I think coming to the side of INEC, or if I might even add some certain things from what the chief said, I think basically that is one of the challenges we have if such a seminar, took place and INEC, trashed it, without making use of it, is one of the challenges we have, whereby those collaborative efforts, because what we had that created that particular postponement first was because of logistics. So maybe they didn't take advantage of that. And again, on this particular issue of kudos going to INEC, sometimes I think we need to wait till after the collation, because that is where INEC where I have my doubts, with the sincerity and objectivity of INEC. Hopefully from what they had, the youth corpers, the training they had with the youth corpers, I think I'm impressed with that, because almost all the youth corpers, I voted in my ward. All the youth corpers are...
By the way, as an aside, how was it?
No, my ward was perfect, but we need to also understand that there are places we had issues, the Agopa last way or Kota incident, which was not palatable, which we later made some certain inroad into that particular place to see it for ourselves. And
but very succinctly, very briefly, what exactly happened in those areas?
Kota, the challenge I had with all Kota issue and the Makinde experience was basically, as regards security. These two places had police stations almost not up to 5 meters away from where all these incidents happen. And I thought that the police need to have been proactive, because from all the Okota experience, this hoodlums has a freeway. I thought during the election times, that there should not be free movement. But in this case, even in my own area, you have free movement. The bikes were going, and that was why it was easy for some certain people to stop at one point. They invaded about 4 polling units in Okota, one after simultaneously, taking advantage of this, destroying it, burning it, and so many others from one polling unit to the other.
And
to the other.
The security agencies.
I don't know whether they existed there. That is the concern that some of us had. In Makinde police station, the same thing happened. We are almost directly opposite the police station. So if those guys could be bold enough, to cause such a level of mayhem, on those areas, what of other places? So I think on security, I have my doubts with the sincerity of the apparatus. It might not be an INEC issue because almost all these other agencies had budgetary provisions to them. The military I had their own budgetary provisions, the NSCDC, the Civil Defense, the Customs, and so many others had budgetary provisions regarding this election. So for us to have...
Nothing of such should have happened.
Nothing of such should have happened with the level of budgetary provisions that was given to these agencies if they were really sincere of the objective that they were sent there for.
Mr. Shaya Banjoko, as a lawyer, why is it possible in this day and age for people to conduct themselves with such impunity?
Unfortunately, there's still a gap between law and the enforcement of law. So certain laws exist that are not being enforced to the best of the abilities of law enforcement agencies and the system as a whole. If somebody conducted himself in a way that was against the law 4 years ago and the person finds himself free today, there's a tendency that he believes he can go ahead and do the same thing. So I think that's it, the gap between the law and implementation.
Yes, but what about what role do politicians play? I understand that there is a lot of godfatherism in this regard because some known miscreants, some known thugs have the support to the highest level of government. Politicians.
As long as a lot of people continue to sit back and watch others take charge of the political process, we're going to have situations like this. So if a politician sits in his house and controls issues through thugs, it is because there are thugs to use and perhaps the thugs outnumber the electorate. In actual fact, in a game of numbers, you can't actually have as many thugs as you have voters. Okay, I understand that there's an aversion for violence in some people, and which is different from others. But when there are more people who are intent on ensuring the sanctity of the process, the thugs will begin to have a rethink and a step back. So people have to, come out more and ensure that we put the pressure on, so that,
All right, gentlemen, we are at the collating stage. From the reports that we have gathered, the voting process, given some pockets of disruption here and there, but generally speaking, it seemed to have been smooth sailing. Now, we're at the process of collation. Are there possibilities for mischief in this process? Chief Okore, let me begin with you.
Elections do not end on the electorate casting their votes. There is possibilities of mischief from collation, even after the collation, until even the litigation. The election material should be preserved. They should be retrieved. And that is what we know as reverse logistics. There should be a conscientious preservation of all elections materials, voters register, voters cards, and all through. Because at the end of the day, any election process that does not end at the elections might end in the court, in the law court. Therefore, there is possibility of even compromising either by the INEC staff, by the security agencies, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have to end there.
Well, somebody spoke about contingency plans, and that there didn't seem to be enough contingency plans in the elections of yesterday. Mr. Menike, what's your view?
Yes, I will support that assertion because, one, realistically, what we saw had a lot of loopholes, which I think by now, INEC would have surpassed some of those challenges, because if it goes to continue like that, we had it in 2015, and again it repeated itself with almost all. I'm more concerned about the budgetary positions that was given to INEC, which has always been, this one I think is double what others have been getting. So I thought some of those things would have not been there. But I think let us watch and see, how the situations are being dealt with now regarding this coalition. Because just like you rightly said, it doesn't end at casting your vote. It continues there. But from what I saw and my experience in my own personal, where I voted, I discovered that all things being equal, if we follow the mindset of the characters I saw, the youth corpers there, there was this idea of one checking, this check and balances with INEC officials there, the youth corpers, and the police. So I saw where an organized, the synergy was there among all these parties. So if that is the way it will continue to the coalition, and I will not have my fears. But I think the major fear I will have with what I saw at the polling unit where I participated, it will be at the coalition point and the announcement, at the end.
Gentlemen, electronic voting, I think that is the ultimate. How far away do you think we are from that?
As a nation, I think we desire more. We desire the best. Because I cannot say that I can't categorize Nigeria as one of those fourth, what do they call it? They say third world, they say second world. But I think we've improved. With some certain things that has happened in the past, I thought by now that we must have had some certain challenges that will say, yes, we've surpassed this. You understand me, that we are entering into this. So going by your question, electronic voting, if you check out the number of the countries that are using those ITs and so many other things, Nigeria, we are not lacking behind. So it's all about having the right people with the right mindset. You understand me? A conducive environment to do the right thing, the mindset to do the right thing. It's about sincerity of purpose. There's nothing, nobody is asking anybody to reinvent the wheel or even change. Others have done it. Other countries that are sincere, that wants an improvement in every institution, you understand me? They're always there to make changes.
Do you share his view?
I have, if the sharing I'm going to have on that goes far beyond that.
Okay.
Even if, whether it's electronic or whatever, there has to be budgetary provisions quite on time. If it is 4 years, pass the budget for elections, when you know that election comes up every 4 years, pass it on time and give it to INEC to begin to prepare. All this ad hoc arrangement makes nonsense or whatever logistics.
Well, Chair, you intoned the other time that you intend to go into politics with both feet. So you are the politician of the future, but nobody is going to hand over power to you on a platter of gold. Are the youths doing enough? Don't they need to re-strategize and make inroads into not only political parties, but take power away from we old people?
The youths are not yet doing enough. They are the beginnings, the stirrings of the consciousness we can see now. Is it enough now? the youths will need to re-strategize, like you said. This strategy will include an understanding of the political system, the political structure. It will require an almost forensic analysis of that structure and how to integrate into that structure to cause the kind of disruption.
Do you have to integrate?
I would say yes.
Okay. Why?
Fighting from the outside can be very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's harder. I think that to the extent that we have quite established political system, parties, for instance, it will be beneficial for youth to enter into those parties.
The mainstream parties? Into
the mainstream parties. Develop a following in those parties inside and, create get your motivation from within, okay? By the time these youths are exposing themselves to the populace as candidates, they are coming with a force from behind them that makes them, that ensures that the established politicians will have to listen to what they have to say and give opportunities accordingly. Like I said, we're seeing the stirrings now from outside and from within sometimes. It's encouraging, and I think that this would help to make the youths, participate a lot more because it is possible. We can see today that it is possible.
But what gives you so much optimism?
If we look around at some of the results that we are beginning to see today, we can see disruptions in what we used to know. We are seeing traditional holdings of political parties falling to others. We are seeing outsiders, as they were, coming in to cause disruptions in established political systems.
Okay, systems.
In established political systems, and finding success. The success may not be as much as we would like for it to be today, but the success, the building blocks of that success have been laid. And that gives me a lot of optimism for the future.
You spoke earlier, I'm sorry to dwell on this a lot more because the future belongs to the youth. In different forms of businesses, young people have had the opportunity through the force of their own to strategize and rise all the way to the top. Yes. Why is it so difficult in politics?
It's just, for now, we're having a failure of application. Young people have found their way in business without a lot of help from outside. From their exposure, from their education, from the sheer force of the will to make it in business, young people are beginning to find a lot of success. So what we require now is a shift. An understanding that this same strategy that has helped us in business can be brought to bear on the political system, okay? So go into this system, sit down, look at it, understand it, just like you have understood the average business that you're concerned with. Understand the political system, enter it, and deal with it. Apply the exposure, the education that you have to the system, disrupt it. We have done it before, we're doing it every day in business. It's just a matter of shifting and applying to the political system.
Chief Okorie, you've listened to the young gentleman. I call him a politician of the future.
Yeah.
Do you think the critical mass is there for young people to cause sufficient disruption to make a shift?
If you look at our educational curriculum, the subjects like civic education is disappearing. This has to start from the beginning, from the infancy, primary, secondary schools. Teach the youth, teach the children. They don't have to get anything gratis, anything they want without working for it. Majority of the youth I know these days, they want to get there without learning the route. So there has to be this fundamental education, fundamental orientation of this youth. Government, either at the state level or national level, should evolve a youth-oriented program that could make the youth begin to think of things to do. Like Barrister has said, there are things you have to focus your mind on, study it, work for it before getting there.
Sir, what's your input?
I think it's critical that there should be a paradigm shift, politically as regards governance in Nigeria. And I think the youth having, when you look at the age from 18 years and above to the level you call the youths, you will discover that we have the numbers. You understand me? And I really think that it's critical to our national development because we are in a jet age now. This is a computer age, as we usually say. And it takes a lot knowledge, a lot development, research for one to find himself in leadership. One, it's not only about market business. Leadership now across board, just like you mentioned in the other discourse about the Obamas of this world. You can see the current French president. These guys are youths. These are people that are so much exposed, in their various fields. And education has a lot to do there, So I think the youths need a lot foundational issues to deal with here. Regardless of whatever anybody is giving us, man, you would have asked somebody who would say, oh, look at the governor of this, look at the, are they not youths, what have they achieved? But also we have old men that have failed, in their positions as leaders. And they are not using it against them. So I think it's for the youth, to come together, to even know what they want. There is a lot that the youth need to do in Nigeria, based on the situation we found ourselves. And with enough understanding of what politics is all about, with enough understanding of the vision, our focus of where that leadership, because it decides everything. Whether you are a banker, whether you are an engineer, the policies of governments has a lot to do with whatever you are doing. And if you don't have the right people with the right mindset in leadership, that is why we are lagging behind. And the only theory, the only slogan you have now is, oh, these guys are, they say they are not employable. What made them not employable? Because of the system we are running. You have a course that's, you have a course that's supposed to take 4 years. Before you know it, the young man is, almost 8 years or 9 years wasted for nothing. So these are the challenges they have.
Thank you very much, sir. Chair, tell me about visionary leadership. And given the climate, the background from which we're coming, as Chief Okorie said, the values are distorted. I was speaking the other day with the state director of the National Orientation Agency, and he believes that a lot of things in terms of values are lopsided, and they have an almost uphill task reversing those values, no thanks to our so-called leaders and elders. So talk to me about visionary leadership, which guys like you should be mulling over.
Let me start from values. Our value system is in the doldrums. That is a fallout of what has gone on before for us. So here I am, a young man, growing up and seeing how things are currently being done. There's a tendency for me to get into, there's a tendency for regularity. You see, I just get into the flow and think this is how things should go. I need to take a step back, okay? Sit down, tell myself, no, this is not the right way. This is the way things are currently being done, but it is not right. When I understand that it is not right, then I make a decision that I need
what determines that judgment between right and wrong?
It is going to start from the individual, and then it is going to spread, unfortunately. The National Orientation Agency can help, okay, but they're going to be coming up against themselves, as it were. The National Orientation Agency is an agency of government. You're going to see all the other agencies of government behaving in a certain way, and the National Orientation Agency is trying to teach you a certain way. There's going to be
conflict.
You see, the message may not sell as well as it should, so you have to come back to the individual. We all know that change is going to start from you. That's how change works. Okay, now when this consciousness begins to develop inside one person and then another person, you begin to find yourselves, okay? And then we have social media. The nature of our engagements now are such that like-minded people can easily, quickly find themselves and integrate their ideas, engage with each other, and then they can begin to push a narrative. They can begin to sell an opinion, okay? So this is how a vision will begin to develop. These people will be the core of what we will call visionary leaders. The next thing will be to take power. How do you take power?
But what about the competition for leadership, even amongst that group of young people? And there I think the ego plays a very important part.
The competition for leadership is an exchange of ideas. Even in evolution of human beings, the stronger human being will survive better than the weaker one. It's the same thing with ideas. The stronger ideas are going to come up top, okay? So when you have that clash of ideas, you're going to have...
I'm sorry to interrupt the flow of your thoughts, Shaya, but our time is really not on our side, and I appreciate your time, gentlemen. This is all we can take for now. I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to explore these areas. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming. Abuja, thank you very much. It's over to you.
Thank you, Bayo, and I must say I enjoyed the line of thought of the young Nigerian there. That is clearly showing that there's a generational shift. If you have such line of thought, then Nigeria will really move forward. Thank you so much, Bayo. And back in Abuja, we are going to sustain discussion, and in the course of the discussion, we shall be going to the Collation Center and other centers in Abuja. But quickly, back here, let me start with Dr. Mukhtar Imam, because in a couple of minutes, he'll be leaving us. Your last words, I know you may still be back on set, but for now, what's your last words for Nigerians and the electoral process?
Regardless of all the heat and negative thoughts and vibes that have been coming from different quarters, I want to tell Nigerians that we have tremendously made success as far as our advancement in our democratic journey is concerned. We're not where we were when this democratic processes started. We have been able to advance significantly. And so that positive vibe, that mindset is something that we must take with us. In the course of our democratic sojourn, there is likelihood of pitfalls or for pitfalls. There is no climb that is immune from or to that. We're going to have all of these things. But as we move forward, collectively, we will be able to advance the cause of ourselves and the country at large. Like I said in the beginning, we're all stakeholders in the Nigerian project. But away from that, having said that, it's quite imperative that I end on this note. Excuse me. In the words of Chairman Mao of China, he said that from a long-term perspective, first, that
did he say that in English? Did he say that in English?
Yes, he did. All reactionaries are paper tigers. By the way, he studied extensively in George Washington's library, so he was quite sound in all. That all reactionaries are paper tigers, and that from a long-term point of view, the real power belongs to the ordinary people.
Very well.
So as we advance in our electioneering process, it is very imperative that Nigerians understand what powers they wield. We are the ones who elect these individuals to position of authority. They react to what we do. Our action is what gives them a sense of direction. So when you find that the leadership has some questionable issues or characters around it, it is reflective of what the people do. And so we must try as much as we can to pave a new path, to chart a new course. And by so doing, I hope that Nigeria will make it to that point where they call El Dorado. We will get there.
Thank you very much, Dr.
I am one of those unrepentant optimists of the Nigerian dream. I have that volcano of optimism.
Like I would say most of that, in our place, change is permanent. Yes. Life in itself is a perfect, constant connections and disconnections.
Of course.
Right. It's either you're connecting to disconnect or you're disconnecting to connect.
Of course.
Bringing in new ideas, taking out the old ones, and taking out the old ideas and bringing the new ones. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mukhtar Imam. Dr. Mukhtar Imam is of the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy University or the base university. Well, Mukhtar,
we hope to have Dr. Mukhtar Imam once more in our studio. And in just a moment, we'll be going to Jos, but we have some guests coming in very soon. But now, let's join Femi Okeowo, who is already set to get us through some developments in Jos. Is on the plateau.
Thank you, Musbao and Omini. The waiting game continues too in Jos as all Nigerians keep their fingers crossed. This is unlike what happened yesterday when everyone was hoping and going to do it physically. Now we have to play the patience game, and one should say here on the plateau, everybody has resumed his normal business. Those who went to church did that. Those who slept at home rested from the hectic outing of yesterday. And the streets are back live. But then behind everybody's mind, if you can read people's mind, is to begin to see results trickling in, and our reporters too have gone out, and here are some of the reports that we have. Collation of results is ongoing at the 207 registration areas across Plateau State. Mary Domtor visited Jos North Collation Center and reports that the exercise is going on amid tight security.
This is the Jos North Local Government Area Collation Center, where results are being collated for the National Assembly and presidential elections, which held yesterday. This is the electoral officer for Jos North Local Government Area, Mr. Godwin Edibo. Sir, which results are being collated here, and for how long have the results been here?
We commenced the collation process at the local government yesterday from 3 p.m. So far, we have been able to collect 4 local registration areas. We have 3 now on standby that will make their presentations very soon.
Okay, so how soon will the results be announced?
We will announce the collation officers will announce the results upon completion of collation of all the results from the 14 registration areas. Is after that announcement of results will be made. Interestingly too, this center serves as a collation and returning center for the Jos North Bassa Federal Constituency, as well as the Jos North Senatorial District. And all the declarations and the returns will be made here in this center.
The process is moving smoothly, though slowly, but everything is going very, very smoothly and peacefully.
The process is moving without any problem, but there are some few challenges of turning up of the ward results. They have not been coming at the time we're expecting them to come.
It has been a very Herculean task due to the fact that the number of political parties that participated in the election are much. And at the end of the day, only few of the parties were able to fill the candidates. We were here, we had a sleepless night.
You can see the collation is ongoing, and it has been a smooth exercise, even though the turn up or the collations from the registration areas is still slow, but yet it's a nice collation because we are not encountering any challenge here. So
it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Mary. Let's just emphasize that that report came from a registration area collation center. Now, the INEC headquarters collation center is yet to be up. But information we're gathering from our studio tells us that any moment from now, the INEC headquarters collation center, where all the registration centers will eventually go into, will be up any moment from now. And indeed, the police commissioner in Plateau State and some security agencies did an inspection of the collation center venue and did some mop-up to ensure that everything is ready for that exercise. Now let's take some other stories coming from the polling units, but this time it's not directly about the casting of vote or elections. It is about the opinions of major stakeholders in Plateau State. Now, as Nigeria continues to await the presidential and National Assembly election results held across the country, some opinion leaders in Plateau State have commended INEC for a good job and appealed to political parties and politicians to accept the outcome of the polls in the interest of Nigeria's democracy. Abdul Wahab Babankanti collated these views at the polling units across the state.
From the farthest local governments in the southern zone down to the state capital, the elections were adjudged to be generally peaceful.
We don't have any problem anywhere. If we have a problem as a chief security officer, I should have known up to this morning. So everything is going very peaceful in Plateau State.
Nigerians are hopeful and determined that they will choose the next set of leaders. It's been very, very peaceful and calm here. And the exchange of fraternity and pleasantry among the electorates is an indication that they appreciate the enormous responsibility of peace as a catalyst for a good and credible electoral systems.
Commend INEC for improving the system. It is faster, less laborious, and easy to trace people's names and the rest of them. The card reader, which used to be a problem before, is now very, very effective and efficient.
Elections in some few polling units, however, had to be rescheduled for today due to some irregularities encountered with elections materials. Collation of result is ongoing. In Jos, Abdul Hababankanti, NTA News.
Concerning that last statement by Abdul, we will revisit that area when Paul Dama concludes his his story on those centers that were rescheduled for today. You remember we told you about a few centers, polling centers that were rescheduled for today, and we'll bring you before the end of our discussion. For now, let's do an overview of the elections on the plateau and in neighboring states around here. And to do that for us is the Vice Chancellor of the Plateau State University, Bokos, Professor Johanna Izam. You're welcome to Nigeria Decides.
Thank you very much.
Now, it's my first contact with you on Nigeria Decides, so let us allow you express your thoughts about the process of elections so far in 2019.
Well, thank you very much. The background was that of great anxiety, as you know, which was fueled essentially by the kind of commentaries that we saw before the election. Again, you also had issues with the rescheduling of the elections by INEC. And one thought that by yesterday when the election took place, many of the polling units will be theaters of some kind of rancor, misunderstanding, tension, and so on and so forth. But honestly, what we saw here on the plateau is one that can be described as really very peaceful conduct. All the elements of transparency, as far as one can see, were on display at the polling units. Registration or accreditation and voting simultaneously taking place. And of course, many people also saw that the system was fairly perfected to some level of extent, except of course for the issue of the late start in most of the polling units. The average time to start was 10, 11 a.m.
But statutorily 8 o'clock.
But statutorily they were meant to start by 8 o'clock.
Yes.
And again, the logistic issues. But by and large, it ended up well. In a number of places that I know where the starting time was not observed, the electoral officers gave some extra time so that everybody will have a chance to vote. And again, let me emphasize again that it was very peaceful. And I think we are grateful that we have seen such level of peace this time around holding elections in Plateau State.
Now from your observation of our political process, and we are 20 years into this current dispensation now, let's look at it as an overview. Do you think Nigeria is building a political culture? Or, and if there's any difference in it, do you think Nigeria is building a democratic culture?
Well, as far as the organization and conduct of elections is concerned, my personal and honest view is that we are moving forward. Well, there may be challenges, and every human organization faces these challenges. As a project manager, I know even in the way we run our homes, you sometimes set targets or things to do, but along the way, you have to deal with the challenges that come up. And so in the organization and conduct of election, I think we are deepening the process of democracy in Nigeria to the extent that, yes, we can see, like I said, the deepening of the elements of transparency at display at the polling units. You also recall that significantly, in all the 207 wards, one is yet to hear of any story of ballot snatching, which used to be the case in the first and probably second republics when elections are conducted. So to the extent of the organization and conduct of elections, I think we are moving forward as a country. We can only hope that INEC will continue to improve, beginning from even the governorship elections that come up in the next 2 weeks, on some areas of management of logistics so that time efficiency can also be enhanced.
Your answer dwelled more on the conduct of elections. You said it yourself, in the organization and conduct of elections that we are moving forward. But democracy and political culture goes beyond elections.
Yes.
So what is your assessment if you have to expound the horizon to look at our general day-to-day conduct as a nation, both in administration and in followership? Are we building a democratic culture? Are we building a political culture?
Well, to the extent that one observes a reduction in the negative conduct of electorates in the last election, like I mentioned, to the extent that we saw counting and entry of results in some of the units happening even late hours of the day. And you had all the agents of political parties doing this together peacefully without fighting themselves. Results were being filled under sometimes even rechargeable lanterns, and there was no fighting. I think Nigerians are beginning to accept more the culture of democracy, and we can only hope that whatever the results, I think we should be able to accept that. And like you said, there are many facets of democracy. The other issues, of course, is the issue of the plurality of the Nigerian political space in terms of the headache that we had with the numbers of political parties contesting in the election. One will have wished that moving forward, because you will notice that some of the problems that occurred at the polling units in terms of time management was because of the large number of ballot papers that had to be sorted out. If you look at the size of the presidential ballot paper, carrying a list of over 70 candidates, a significant number of them not scoring a single vote in the polling units. I think that some level of intolerance also has to be minimized going forward, so that the diversity of opinions, the aggregation of views in the Nigerian political space could be narrowed a bit further, so that consensus building and nation building efforts will be based on platforms that are easier to manage.
Consensus building, to use your term, would be done politically. It would be done by the people. And the Supreme Court relied on the constitutional provision of freedom to associate. That seems to be what has expanded the scope of forming political parties now. Now, can there be anything done, even if it is by legislation, to encourage consolidation of ideas? Everybody seems to think that only through his own idea can we have good governance. So we have 73 people vying to be president. How can we consolidate ideas and move together as a people to get good governance without the proliferation of candidates?
Yes, I would have thought that immediately after these elections, one of the challenges that needs to be squarely addressed is reinforcing the excellency of the Nigerian democracy, looking at the electoral laws of the land. And I think such issues like this, yes, there are constitutional guarantees for freedom of association, but we also know that in many countries that have probably even more diversities, the practice is to have fewer political parties. Not everybody will agree with this, but if you look at the US, for instance, you are talking about two major parties in the political space. And so I think that we can look at legislation, as you put it, to see how some of these things can be addressed. But most importantly, national conversations must continue so that freely on our own volition, we will see the need to narrow the diversity, because it doesn't make sense to some of us that 71 platforms, I mean, 73 actually, platforms for presidential election, when we actually know who the serious candidates are. So with all due respect, I think we'll do ourselves well if we try to look at these things.
Okay, let's take on some of the issues that were raised in some of the reports. People would expect that at this time of the day, we should have started having at least results from federal constituencies. But the reporters noted, and indeed the resource persons they interviewed complained about the low turn-up of polling officials from their various polling booths to the registration centers. I thought INEC could also give a timeline by which polling officials must bring their returns at least 5 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours after the close of poll. Is that possible?
Well, like I said, in project management, the plan is actually different from the actual. You cannot excuse it, the long lapse in terms of delay in transmission of results. But you will be surprised that logistic issues come up. In one of the units close to where I voted yesterday, it was simply an issue of there was no vehicle to transport materials from the collection center to the polling unit. And you never could have planned for that. Probably on arriving, some things could have happened and those kind of events take place. There are also human elements. Sometimes Nigeria is a very, very big country. Organizing election at this large scale, you find out that the human elements alone is a case study in management. Some people were trained as INEC officials, but immediately they go to the polling units, you cannot monitor the behavior. Some simply become something else which you never planned for. But I think within the limits of what we are seeing in the general conduct of this election. We hope that sooner or later the results will start coming, and I think Nigerians should keep faith with the efforts that INEC has made to give us a credible election this time around.
You have observed it, and some of the resource persons in our story too have observed it, the peaceful conduct, the peaceful relationship between our people. But then when results begin to come out, you find diversities again. You have people disagreeing, and yet 24 hours, the election, comparatively, relatively, no violence. The waiting time, no violence. Then results begin to come, and everybody that seems to be hopeful and waiting begins to rise up in arms. What may be causing that? It's like part of the political culture is that we are not ready to lose.
Yeah. I think it's part of the restructuring that Nigeria actually requires in terms of what we see as the desperation of political actors. Okay. For whatever reason, I think that looking ahead, we must do something about how offices are created in the political space, yes, in terms of what privileges and opportunities there are. And like you mentioned, elections went on smoothly, but we are praying that there won't be post-election violence as a result of desperation. Yes. Because actually, it is the political actors and their inability to accept results that you see everybody creating platform for crisis or violence, simply because he's not going to win the election. But one of the things that we keep on emphasizing is that so long as the credibility and the transparency of the process will be there on display, I think we will minimize those incidences. And we hope that this time around we will have less incidences of violence, because I believe the process has been sufficiently transparent and credible to give us the results that we need.
But in spite of the beauty of the process, the transparency of the process, there are intellectuals too that have argued that the winner takes all syndrome of our offices seems to exclude other people once you come into office. Those who get into office become more or less monarchs, and their word is final. And those other people on the outside are completely excluded. So everybody fights to come into office anyhow. Can anything be done in the presidential system we have to include other people who have lost out?
Well, except there are constitutional amendments that requires some form of collaborative governance structure. Unfortunately, this is likely to continue. Unfortunately, again, you could see even from the character of Nigerian politicians in terms of the cross-carpeting. One moment in this party, the next moment they are there, and they keep on swinging. And it's all part of the winner takes it all syndrome, because if it's a zero-sum game and people believe that they have no stake at it once they are losers, the level of desperation. Yes. And then also the privileges, like I say, attached to political positions or offices, we also have to look at that. So it's a lot of things going forward. I hope that we'll have the courage to look at the things we need to do through the Constitution, and then also through national conversations that can help us arrive at systems that are genuinely Nigerian, that address the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerian people.
And addressing the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerian people is not an electioneering process alone. It is the involvement of everyone who has been part of the electioneering process in governance and monitoring governance and making contributions to governance, part of which Professor Johanna Izam, Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, Bokos, has enumerated for us. And we join you there in Abuja to continue to wait. And as soon as results start to come in, you can trust the Nigerian Decides studio of the Nigerian Television Authority will be there to get you. But for now, we are keeping in line with the rules that INEC And only INEC has the authority to announce results at whatever level, whether the federal constituency or the Senate district, or indeed the presidential election. Thank you from the just end here, and I hand you back to Omini and Dan Wahab in Abuja.
Thank you very much, Femi Okeo, right there in our JOS Network, Zonal Network Center. We appreciate your contributions, and we really enjoyed your discussion there with the Prof, who he told us to have faith in Nigeria, and we're moving forward, truly so we are. Now we have two guests joining us.
As much as we had very noticeable lapses along the entire process, it's always very gratifying to hear from resource persons to say that the process, despite that, has been transparent and credible. Well, while we were in JOS, we had two new guests, although, of course, the president of Truth Be Told, Bola Bakare, is still with us. Once again, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad.
And we had joining us Esther Uzoma, Esquire, co-convener, Nigeria Civil Society Institution Room.
My pleasure.
And Peter Oyebola Oyeneye, fellow Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, NIPR, and CEO Advanced Management Academy, Abuja. He's also a public analyst and PR expert. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Omini.
Well, the conversation continues.
Mr. Oyeneye, we're glad to have you join us. We understand your passion for the image of this country and, of course, oneness of the country. Now, let's look at the contribution of social media to this democracy we enjoy in Nigeria now, 20 years, and still counting since democracy returned since 1999. Now, let's take a look at social media. Ordinarily, what people would not have that opportunity to say, now we're having Nigerians, more contributions from Nigerians, having these windows to vent their opinion on social media. What do you make of that, the contribution of social media to Nigerian democracy?
Okay, thank you very much, Wahab. Now, we have the good sides and we have the downsides as well. The good side is that over time, you will know that you cannot do some terrible things and get away with it.
Very well.
Somebody is somewhere filming what you're doing. Somebody is going to write. Somebody is going to say something. So it's good for us. So it's like checks and balances. But on the other side, we have when we use it for negative things. When we talk about fake news, when we discourage people, when we abuse people, when we talk about what we are not sure of. Like some people are releasing results now, and nobody's supposed to release any result, but people are compiling, they are doing their stuff. So it's the downside of it. But one thing that for every coin, you have the other side. So there's no way you have the good and you have the bad. But the most important thing is that it's good that the umpire, I keep saying, nobody can release any result. So whatever you are seeing there is just child's play. When the real results are coming, we will know.
Very well, we're having this outburst on utterances on social media. Yeah. How would that affect Nigeria's image internationally?
I must tell you I'm not happy about what I've read, what I've seen, the posts here and there, okay? Because whenever you have an election, there will be a winner, there will be a loser. And after that, we should come back. A lot of us, we talk about democracy. A lot of people like democracy. I also like it. But one area of democracy I see have issue with is that after the election, okay, now you now have a group building, you have a group scattering. In this country, all we need now is all the groups building. Not one building, one scattering. The Vice Chancellor of Plateau State University just said something, okay? He said, see, we must, it's like the moment we win, okay, we take all. So the losers are now saying, I will not accept, let's scatter the team so that the next time, no, it shouldn't be that way. Maybe we have to get us in that aspect of democracy. When we win, let's come together. How can we move our country together? We have a name to protect. We have a reputation. I know the social media, the way it is, it's global. If it were before, anything we did then, on NTA, on whatever, we'll see it in Lagos, in Abuja here. But now, everything, pen, a jot, US, UK, everywhere in the world. So we must be very, very careful. I want to challenge and I want to appeal to National Orientation Agency. Probably after the election, they have to school us in the art and social science of managing our image as a country. The Nigerian Institute of Public Relations
along the line,
must also
we'll dwell on this issue of National Orientation Agency, because value mindset reorientation is very, very, very crucial.
Important.
Now, but quickly, you know, we've been here, locked in here, though we have a space to know to ventilate what is happening outside. Esther Zoma, what's the situation like from the situation room?
Fantastic.
Moving ahead, because we're already a day. Bio in Lagos said we are the afternoon after the election. What's the situation like now?
Thank you very much for having me. At the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, we've already issued a statement, when the elections were, ongoing. And we have observers across every polling unit in this country. We also have observers manning every collation center in this country. As such, we receive real-time information. Now, of course, we all know the clumsy start to the elections. We know the challenge of logistics. We also know deaths that were, that happened in certain states. And these are issues, that we are concerned with. Presently, the process of collation is still ongoing. We have not received any news that will make our hearts skip. I understand.
That's very good to know.
Yes, in some places, also in Abia State, elections are going on. The people who couldn't vote for one reason or the other. All in all, we cannot, take away one thing: the unparalleled enthusiasm and resolve of Nigerian citizens to be part of this democratic process. It is now a given. People came out as early as 7 a.m., 6:30. They came with their chairs, they came with their mats, they came with their snacks. And they organized themselves. You know how people say that Nigerians are rowdy? No, they came and lined up and they were writing their names, waiting patiently. I think that is a demonstration of faith in the system, in the organization of INEC. I think that shows that, listen, we trust what these people are doing. We trust that our votes will count, and we commended, the Nigerian citizens. For that, you should be involved. And then moving forward, there are issues that eventually we must interrogate. If we say logistics challenge, what does it mean? Does it mean materials were not printed? Does it mean the printers, they were mismatched? Does it mean it was not delivered? Does it mean, what exactly does it mean? In that chain of events, these are issues that will be interrogated, hereafter. And then we also want to know, I think really we should start having the conversation of unbundling INEC.
Okay, we'll get to that. In a matter of seconds, we're going to Port Harcourt, but we need to get the last words from Bola Bakare, because when we return from Port Harcourt, he would have exited from the studio. So, Bola, given all she has said, we heard from the VC of the Plateau State University, who talked about the fact that despite the lapses, the process has been transparent and credible. And Oyene has talked about the need for the National Orientation Agency after now to be rejigged, maybe to look at issues of working on the mindset, value orientation of Nigerians.
That's right.
And Esther has talked about the fact that despite all what they have heard in the Situation Room, there is nothing that will make the heart start beating right now. Everywhere is getting stable, despite all the tension. Your last words.
My last word goes in tandem with what we've said earlier. This election we're having on hand, we should, for now, give INEC some kudos. Some good work is being done. The good work is in progress. We are not negating the fact that there are sons of the devil somewhere, but with God on our side, we will achieve. And I'm a very, very positive person. With the truth on our side, we have achieved. The little bits and pieces of glitches, and we need to manage that. Those are basic rules, basic part of human existence. But I can categorically tell you, the average Nigerian out there, INEC is good to go. We are going to have a good election. Work is in progress. So just sit back. Like they say on the streets, sit down, look, a good result is forthcoming.
Thank you so much, Bakare, and we appreciate you for spending all the time with us. But it is not yet over until after the elections, because we still have you subsequently in some other sessions.
We'll be glad to be here.
Well, at this time, we need to remind you once again that we are streaming on social media, Instagram, all that. We assured you that the biggest television network in Africa, we're going to go around and give you second by second, minute by minute developments. Well, we just left Jos. We are now set to go to the Garden City, Port Harcourt, where I'm told Donald Voyager is standing by. Donald, what's the update? Is it also a perfect, despite the lapses, the process is on and the tensions are down?
Generally quiet, but
well, it looks as though we are having all the challenges there from Port Harcourt. As soon as that is put through, we'll move on. But I think, let me sustain with Esther. Now, it's a build-up to collation, and everybody by now, I believe they are watching. When are they going to the ICC? Coming from there, what's the build-up like? Let me get back to that.
All right. Again.
Very expectant?
Yes. The interest in the process. And, you know, that enthusiasm, you see, nothing validates an electoral process like the involvement of the citizens. Nothing validates it. In fact, it is the only scorecard, you know, for me that you will say, that we used to say, wow, this is fantastic. And so INEC opened up its doors. Say, listen, observers, you know, we are accredited, we come and see what we're doing. Even after that election was postponed, if you remember, he was not giving daily briefings. And it was not saying, this is what we are doing today, this is what we have done now, this is what we have done now. And as build up to the collation, citizens are, you know, accredited citizens are milling into the International Conference Center. The processes are open, okay? So, you know, and then remember, at the PUs, various results were released. You know, we called it the people's results. Those ones are pasted. People are coming with all that. So that eventually, at the level of the PU, the ward, the local government, listen, people are following it. And they are interested in it, and they will comment INEC or flag any miscalculation.
But that will be after the results have been announced.
No, what I'm saying is that people are interested. Okay. They are not coming to watch. It's active participation, you know, and that is interesting. So we see a commission that has taken, for instance, if they didn't open their doors, people won't know what is going on. Sure. I'm telling you. So people are interested. They are coming with the results that were released at the PUs, at the world level, at the local. That is fantastic. So you will see Nigerians. They are the ones that will say, listen, this thing, you really lost it. No, Oga, you want this one.
That's right.
Yes, the whole idea of party agents is you follow the process. It is fantastic.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much. I trust we're going to continue in that line, and we will see your record of turnout, voters turnout, and we'll compare with what we have on the screen. But for now, let's go to our Sokoto Zonal Network Center, where we have Dalhatu Abdullahi standing by to give us some update from that part of the country. Dalhatu, what's going on? What's the latest from that part?
Well, good afternoon, Ms. Bahu, and welcome to the seat of the Caliphate on NTA Sokoto Network Center. We have in the studio to discuss issues surrounding the election processes that are going on. We have Dr. Malami Ali Ugandi, the chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association, National Committee on Intelligence and Surveillance. And we have a historian, Dr. Aisha Bawa of the Department of History, Usman Namfod University, Sokoto, supervisory presiding officer for the 2019 elections. But before we delve into the discussion, let us take this report from Kebbi State. 7 local governments of Kebbi State are to submit their results at the Zuru Local Government Collation Center. Nuratanko Wakili is live at the Collation Center for an update.
Well, thank you, studio. I am now at the Zuru Local Government Office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is the collation center for the Kebbi South Senatorial Zone. 7 local governments of Yauri, Zuru, Ingaski, Shanga, Fakai, Sakaba, and Nkosagu are expected to bring their results here for collation. And according to reports here, the exercise is going on normal without hitches. We have the officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission. We also have political party representatives, the security agencies, as well as the observers. And according to reports, security agencies confirmed that there was no report of any breach of law and order or violence across the senatorial zone. I have with me the Zulu Local Government Electoral Officer in person of Alhaji Abdul Rashid. How will you describe the exercise in Zulu Local Government so far?
Assalamu alaikum. The exercise was generally successful.
Okay, we seem to be having challenge death with Sokoto Network Center. We come back to you as soon as we're able to establish that connection again, but we continue with the discussion here in the studio.
Yes, let me sustain with Oyeneye. He raised a fundamental issue here because the last line of thought raised by Esther clearly shows that truly, take it or leave it, at the beginning of this democracy, we heard so much about nascent democracy, and somewhere somebody came up with an advocacy that one way to build the Nigerian democratic culture is rather than look at geopolitical zones, we should also look at geo-economic zones. Okay. Now, the electoral process is also building. Before now, you would have known where the election is going, but because it is building, everybody is under some kind of edge. Sure. Suspense. Who's going to win? Well, we'll get to that. Now, what kind of value mindset orientation should we be expecting for the National Orientation Agency to build the democratic culture in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. I expect that by now we should have a lot of jingles, advert, playlet coming up to talk about the fact that you should accept the results. This thing is not about a part of the country, it's about all of us. It's not about a religion, it's about all of us. If we scatter our country, we have no other country. And let me tell you something, there is so much power in communication. The word has power. What you send out affects people, whether they like it or not, they will be affected by it. If you keep telling people, accept the results, do not fight, no violence, and the rest of them, I tell you, this body has a way of receiving stuff. You may say, I won't accept. It's a lie. When it's time, you accept. You understand? So I expect the National Orientation Agency to start doing that now. Okay? And now, the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, we are also into communication, talking to people, creating bridges of relationship. Okay? For instance, if you are a Lagos man, you can't enjoy Lagos if Abuja is not there. If you're an Abuja man, you need to go do business in Lagos. You want to fly to Port Harcourt for oil and gas and the rest of them. So you can see that we are linked together. So this should be the job of National Orientation Agency, the Ministry of Information, the communication tools of the government. That's the radio. NTA is doing well, okay? Federal Road Safety, Federal Radio Corporation is also doing well. Okay, we have to push our people. See, like I said the other time, that aspect of democracy that allows, I'm not saying there should not be opposition, but now, people don't do opposition the way they should do it. People just sit and say, how can we scatter this government? No, it shouldn't be that way. We need to do a lot of building now. Rome was not built in a day. Abuja is still being built.
That's like a personal interest against the national.
Well, yes. I'm told, like we told you, we have to sustain this. Our brief, the Nigerian television is the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Yes.
And we have shot our viewers that will go around the country. Port Harcourt is set. We'll come back to this.
Okay.
And just for a reminder, you can join us. This program is streaming. You can join us on Twitter at NTA News Now, Facebook, NTA Network News, YouTube, NTA/live-Instagram, and NTA Network News. Well, Donald, are you set for us now? What is that update from the Garden City?
Thank you very much. Be happy to tell you that Port Harcourt is generally quiet. We have a peaceful town, regardless of the skirmishes in a few places. Generally speaking, all has been quiet. I've invited to the studio to join me in looking at the issues after the elections. One of them is Mrs. Beauty Ibiama, Head Gender Unit INEC Rivers State. She will be talking to us about a few things on the elections and collations as they happen. And we have Mr. Festus Oguche, a lawyer. He will also be talking about these things that have sprung up from Saturday's election. In the meantime, after the casting of ballots for the elections which held across the country, and we now have moved into the collation stage, with results being expected from the 23 local governments of Rivers and Bayelsa. This is a process that is ongoing. We will be bringing you updates from our correspondents as we receive them. INEC Rivers State Collation Center is set as officials, journalists, and other stakeholders are arriving at the venue for final collation. Diankume Ulolo, INEC office with an update. Diankume, what can you tell us?
The Independent National Electoral Commission INEC River State Collation Center is set as INEC awaits some local government area to submit the result of presidential and National Assembly elections. Security agencies are on a peaceful atmosphere. Back to studio.
INEC River State Collation Center. Sorry, I think I'm mixing up that one. The collation of results for the 2019 presidential and National Assembly elections in Emoho Council Secretariat of River State was marred with several hours of gun battle of scamper for their safety late last night. NTA crew who went for the collation exercise were trapped at the Council Secretariat while the ugly incident lasted. Kingsley Amajiri reports.
Earlier, before the several hours of shooting between the invading political talks and the ensued, ad hoc staff who conducted the elections were submitting the results preparatory for the ward collation exercise.
We've collated our results at the polling unit, so we're waiting for the collation officers to come out so we can hand over our result sheet to them.
It's been difficult, honestly. Series of crisis. Most of the coppers running here inconclusive. But thank God nothing happened to them. But most of the wards, they concluded their elections.
But for divine guidance, NTA crew would have been caught up in the ensuing gun battle while we stepped into the collation hall. It was as if we were in Syria given the gun battle. After several hours of waiting, where we are held down at the council secretariat, men of 6th Division, Nigerian Army came to our rescue and provided cover for our crew to escape. In Port Harcourt, Kingsley Amajiri.
In the meantime, reports from Uyo, Akwa Ibom State says sorting and counting of ballots is ongoing. Correspondent Adidion Iba spoke with us with INEC, an INEC official on the collation process.
Unit 6 Ward 9 in the local government area. Obviously, voting has been concluded here, and what is happening now is the sorting and counting of the votes. I have with me the polling officer here. She's going to be talking to us about the conduct of this exercise. How has it been like in this? This is the collation sorting it out to the various units. And then we have about 14 units here. So we sorted it out. It actually took some time. We didn't start exactly by 8. Though we came before 6:30, but we did not start exactly by 8. Because we are sorting out the ballot papers, boxes, and all that to various units. So we did not start exactly. And generally, how is the conduct here? It has been well. Let's pray. Situation report at Ward 9, Unit 6 is over now to the studio.
And back to Rivers, to Port Harcourt. On a more cheery note, Rivers State is blessed with human and material resources. It's also a tourist haven with beautiful sights. This documentary showcases the tourism potentials of Rivers State.
The beautiful city of Port Harcourt, referred to as Golden City, along the Niger Delta area of Nigeria, bounded by the Atlantic Ocean to the south. Port Harcourt and its people have unique cultures, peculiar topography, and sparkling potentials, creatively harnessed to make the city an attraction for many tourists, both within and internationally. At the heart of the city is Port Harcourt Pleasure Park. Wide variety of worthwhile activities to engage, especially families and friends.
We don't have any challenges, as it were, and so people are free to visit any of the local government of the state that they want to visit during this holiday time. Have fun, meet with their family members, their friends, colleagues, and whatsoever. Have discussions, have parties, free, night and day. We don't have any challenge.
A few kilometers away from the pleasure park is the Garden City Amusement Center, the Polo Club, and the 18-hole golf club, a prime recreational destination.
There is no international resort that don't have a golf course. So golf by itself, it's good for tourism.
Yes, this is my form of relaxation. And yes, I believe that is also necessary for people, tourists, to come out and play golf. They can do it here. We have hotels all around the course because it's situated in the old GRA.
The Isaac Borough Park, situated at the array of Port Harcourt, houses statues indicating prowess of historic military personnel and weapons. The monument of King Jaja of Opopo creates a cross-cultural interactions for tourists. The museum has beholding artifacts of marks, poetry, and sense of the people's rich cultural heritage and antiquities.
The way this place provides a window for people to relate with their past, and when they come, when they see, they are excited, because like I have said, some of these cultural practices you don't even see again.
Today I saw some artworks about our traditions, the agriculture, textiles and clothing.
To come here more times, to have some fun, and I really enjoyed. I learned a lot. At first when I came, I thought that these things were idols.
There is also the Port Harcourt Tourist Beach, an amazing site for fun seekers, especially during festive season. Other ceremonies where the famous boat regatta is often on display to spice up the fun and excitement of tourists and visitors.
Very great state, looking at the potentials that we have here, so it's quite worrisome to have all of this hoopla over elections. Now, back to the studio, we'd like to go to our guests. Mrs. from INEC, what will you be able to tell us as to the state of collation at this moment?
In Rivers State, the state of collation is that at the different federal constituency level, collations have been expected at that level. At the senatorial district collation center, the collation officers are also there. Collation is on, it's in progress as we speak. So at the different federal constituency collation centers in the states, collation is right in progress now.
Okay. Getting reports that in the social media, people are releasing what they call results of these elections. I believe, and not a few people also believe, that INEC has a bounden duty to quickly alert people, even as it has said so several times. No result is a result unless those ones released by INEC. Are we on top of this?
Yes, the commission is on top of this. The final result is not yet announced or declared by the commission. Probably, maybe results being released could be that from polling units, because at this point in time, is being concluded at the polling unit. So results may emanate from such centers. But from the commission is yet to declare any results known to the public.
We'll take advantage of a presence for very clear and definitive timelines for the rescheduling of elections in places where violence prevented elections from holding, because people are, at the end of the day, the beneficiaries of that effort to ensure that elections hold. We would hope that INEC is the convenience of people to come for those elections at the dates that they will be rescheduled, because up till this moment, that is nothing has been said about that, except that they are rescheduling the elections.
Definitely, the commission is looking into that, because before that decision will be taken, the commission will have to stakeholders that this election is going to take place at their various local government area. So at the end of the meeting with the stakeholders, the commission will come up with a press release fixing a rescheduled date for such election.
Okay, thank you, Madam. I'll come back to you. Mr. Oguche, yes. One of the things that we observed over time from the beginning of the democratic experience in 1999, there's been violence in places, but there's no evidence of how the authorities have dealt with those who perpetrate this violence, people who have been involved in it. We hear about ballot boxes being snatched. We don't hear about people being sanctioned. No evidence that government has been able to demonstrate with the treatment of some people as a deterrent. Where does that leave us, given the continuation of this trend?
And that apparently explains why the trend is deadly. And also tells us that maybe there could be gaps in the laws, or maybe the inadequacies here and there, or that the people who should take appropriate action to ensure that people who commit electoral offenses are brought to book are not doing their job. But apparently what is important is that the unbundling of INEC has become an imperative, and that has been on the table for quite some time, and the authorities are not doing anything about it. The Justice Mohammed West Commission made such recommendations for the creation of an Electoral Offences Commission. The recommendations of that commission did not go to the extent of maybe prescribing for offences beyond what is there in the Electoral Act, but it is also an imperative. So it is simply that the people who get involved always find their way out of it, get exculpated out of it, because they are playing the